Sure. Commissioner Gore? Commissioner Gore? Commissioner Volpe? Commissioner Walowski? Commissioner Locks?
Commissioner Locke's here.
All
Here.
right. Alternate Albanese.
Raising his hand there too.
Alternate Albanese here.
Alternate Coles?
Alternate Coles is president.
Alternate Coviello? Alternate Salvacool? Secretary Santiago?
Santiago's here.
Vice Chair Salka?
Salka is here.
Chairman Hammersley?
Hammersley is here. I see Jeff Work out there. I don't know if he's just not unmuting himself. I did hear from Joe Coviello. He's going to be a little bit late, and Christina Volpe won't be joining us tonight. In her place, we'll see Caleb Coles. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Caleb's got the flag, so. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America.
to the republic
For which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection? Thank you. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting on May 4th, 2021.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Salko with a motion. Do we have a second?
Second by Locks.
Second by Commissioner Locks. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to item 7, public hearing. Item 7A, proposed zoning text amendment to amend section 3-08 Housing Opportunity Zone, Zone Amendment 608, petition of Brian F. Macarello Esquire to change zoning district from R80 to Housing Opportunity District, property located at 295 Landing Street, parcel size 11.21 acres, ZC 569, site plan application of Frank and Mary Fragola to construct an age-restricted affordable housing development of 30 units under Connecticut General Statute Section 8-30G, property located at 295 Landing Street, special permit number 1811. This is continued from the May 4th meeting. Before we open it up for the applicant, I just want to take care of a couple of administrative items. We're joined by attorney Brian Smith, and I'll ask our corporation counsel or our town attorney, Jeremy Taylor, to introduce Attorney Smith to us.
Thank you, Chairman Hammersley. In addition to myself, who doesn't always sit at these planning and zoning meetings, we do have special counsel Brian Smith of Robinson and Cole. He's been asked by the commission to sit tonight because we are doing somewhat complex agenda items, particularly the 830G application that you just mentioned. So welcome, Attorney Smith. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman and members of the commission.
Okay, thanks. Let's open it up to the applicant. Brian, I thought I saw you out there.
Mr. Chairman, can I share the presentation plan with you?
I'm sorry?
Can I share the presentation plan with you, with the commission?
Is this set? Yeah, Seth, go ahead. Is this the site plan, Seth, that you're sharing with us?
Yes. Can you see the?
Yep.
Yep,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Go ahead. I just wanted to show this while Attorney Macarello is introducing the presentation.
Well,
Thank you, Seb.
Floor is yours, so go ahead.
Thank you, Seb. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, commission members, council, and staff. I want to go backwards so then we can go forward. I'll do it briefly. So we are here in 3 different matters. Collectively, they're part of this public hearing. And as Rob described, we have 3 matters before us. We have a proposed amendment to a text to the HOD, which is the Housing Opportunity District text, which is the Southington's version, if you will, of the 8-30 Affordable Housing Statute. There are some differences. We also then have, the second matter is a petition to change the zoning district boundaries from an R80 to, presumably, if approved, the amended HOD. And then the third matter, if the first 2 are not favorable to the applicants, then we're here with the site plan based on the 8-30G statute. Couple things just since the last substantive meeting, which was the first meeting on April 20th. There's been some additions to the documents and they've been uploaded. I want to thank Rob and more importantly, Karen at Rob's office for doing that. So what we have since the April 20th is we have the phase 1 environmental site plan report. That was done and that was, it's part of the site plan. And it's required by the statute and by the current zoning regulations. We have additional information that I sent. I'll go through that briefly. And the first set of documents or emails, which were in direct response to information that was received from the Southington Fire Chief and the Southington Police Chief regarding access points. So what I did after receiving that information from the planning department, I reached out by email to each the fire and the police chief in town, followed it up and made a phone call as a third attempt to communicate regarding the questions. And I know they're very busy, with serious things like fire and actually and safety in town. So perhaps we'll get a reply or staff will get a reply regarding my questions. My questions to them were simply this, that there's a checklist or review list that the fire department in the site plan review provides. And that checklist, simply it's either approved or rejected with some comments. There are 2 additional sites in town that were recently approved by this commission, not every member on this commission. One is at 792 South End Road. That is called Kings Ridge Age Restricted Housing. I provided that sign off from the fire marshal's office. I've also provided, for the benefit of the members that weren't on the commission at the time that was voted, the agenda and then the minutes approving that site, in addition to the other site located at 45 Pacer Lane. That's the most recent one that was approved. That is a similar age restricted complex. And I also provided the fire chief's review and also the site plan for each of those projects, because I'll refer to those. Incidentally, with those 2 applications and approvals, there were no, that I could see, there was no input from the police, the police chief, and I don't believe staff inquired as to that. I mentioned those 2 because not only are they in my package, but also because those have one access point, and similar to the application before you in the site plan. It's got the same number of buildings and it's got the same design, look and feel. And I believe maybe our engineer, Sev, was involved in those. I think he was on both of those. So he designed not only the current applicant's plan according to what would meet fire and the more important fire apparatus in code, but how it would be designed with one access point. Seb will show you, as he did. Since we were here last, we've changed the entrance to this to 295 Landing Street, so it's identical to the other 2 that were approved by this commission. It also has a median in the middle, so you have one way out, one way in. And if you look to the east and at the bottom of my package, I've included a photo of Doral Lane. Doral Lane is right next to this property, and it has one access point, just divided by a median. Also in my package, I provided a couple just materials that were on the web, one from Connecticut and one a national, just dispelling the myths of affordable housing. I know there's been some comments and there's been some objections based on perhaps the type of housing this is and the affordability of the housing. I encourage everyone to do some research on that and to understand what affordable housing is. So in addition to that material, which I submitted, we also have with us tonight another professional in the corner of the applicants, Joe Versteeg. Joe is from Versteeg Associates. He's a code compliance and consultant on fire and safety. Joe's CV was submitted as well, and his one-page report. Joe will talk about the suggestions made by the fire and then obviously with the police. In addition to those items, the updated items were provided by Sev, and I'll let Sev go through those. The revised site plan, as I mentioned, his responses to the planning department questions, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, chronologically also his responses to the our sanitation or our sanitarian based on the septic systems. This is not a community septic; these are individual septic systems, which will be owned by each member unit owner. So having gone through that, I'm going to just step aside. I'm going to let Sev update the commission on the design of this site. Seb? Oh, but I'm sorry. Before I do that, I did amend the text, the proposed text, based on what was suggested from this commission. I reduced the distance to a major transportation corridor from 1,500 feet to 1,000 feet. And I also changed the language to I-84 and 691 as opposed to a public road. So it virtually takes Route 10, any state highway, out of the HOD. And I noticed somebody submitted a parcel list of 10 acres within 1,500 feet of a major. That's going to change. That wasn't done by me. That'll change, obviously, because the proposed text amendments would take a very big, significant amount of those property addresses off the list. So with that, I'll step aside, and Seb, if you wouldn't mind.
Hey, Brian,
Yes,
just to clarify that last point, that list was provided by town staff. As you may recall, we asked them to do a list for us of the other properties that may be subject to that zone text amendment as it was originally proposed. So I
Correct.
appreciate you going and doing the stuff that you did, but that's where that list comes from. So I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I kind of feel bad for whoever prepared that because it'll shrink. I'm sure there's a couple parcels on there, but like I said, most of them would not apply for the proposed amendments to the HOD that we're making tonight.
Got it.
Seth?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Sev Bovino. Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Sev.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good, thank you. At the last meeting, the public and commission had questions that I would like to respond to. There was a question in regard to location of wells on Doral Lane homes and the distance to our proposed SEP systems. I did research that issue. The wells are located in their front yard. Each one of those lots on the west side of the Doral Lane, their wells are in the front yard, not in the rear yard, and they are about 200 feet or more from our SEP systems. It is a very adequate distance in terms of separation from SEP systems to private wells. The water pressure in that area is 50 to 60 PSI. I got this from the water department, and that is very adequate to serve the project. We provided unit plans to the health department showing the interior of the homes, including the basement, the stairs, and the height of the proposed unit. They were interested in that. The units there we are proposing are one-story buildings with basements, approximately 22 feet at height. There will be 18 units with 2 bedrooms, 12 units with 1 bedroom. The roads and the property is maintained by the association. There was a question of who's going to maintain this property. The town is not responsible to maintain the roadways, drainage system for this property. It would be an association addressing that. There was a question about children being allowed. They're not allowed in this facility. We have added a path to the green from the charging station. There was a question about the path from the charging station. We are showing that path going north into the green area on the property next door. The entrance radius and the cul-de-sacs are designed for a large fire truck. However, such truck is not needed to fight fires for one-story units. Additional testimony will be given on this subject tonight by the next professional on the team here. We have modified the entrance by designing a boulevard effect, 2 lanes with a divider. And you can see that over here at the entrance. Start on Lenny Street, you go in, and it goes all the way down where the first cul-de-sac starts. So traffic can go either to the right and come back out, or go straight to the other cul-de-sac. And then on the way out, they can obviously get out a 1 lane coming out.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, is he think he's sharing? Because he's not.
Yes, Sev, you're not sharing your screen.
Okay, I thought I did it before. Let me go back to this then. Nice first. Can you see it now?
Nope.
No?
Nope.
Oh.
Another reason why I'm looking forward to getting back to the in-person meetings.
I'm pressing share. If you allow me to share the content, I think you would have to allow me to share it. And here's I'm clicking on share. And then I'm going to go to the presentation. You see it now?
No.
I don't know what to say.
You're up there earlier, Seth.
I know.
Yeah. I can't quite figure out what's going on here. Lou, are you a host?
No, I am not, as far as I know. No, I'm not. I called in from, I'm in from the town website. You're under the host.
Okay.
I will try again. Here's the share symbol here. I'm going to click on it. And then I'm going to go to the presentation. Did it come up?
No.
Oh, God. Let's try again. Share.
Hey, Brian,
you
while
allowed-
while
they
we're
usually
trying to
will
work
host
through those
that-
technical, ahead,
Mr.
Seth.
Chairman, usually the host has to allow me to share it. Have you clicked on it?
Seth, we've been down this road a couple times. over the
Yeah, I've
last
never had to do that.
15 months. So,
Okay, well, that's,
hey, Brian, maybe it's a good idea to while Seth's trying to figure out what's going on, for someone else on your team to talk.
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe I could continue
Yeah,
with
read it.
with my presentation.
All right, thank you.
Well, I mean, look, it's up to you all. I'm just saying that if you're trying to show us a presentation, we're not seeing anything.
All right, well, you're familiar with the site. The only change of substantial change that was made was the entrance with the boulevard effect to the property. And we did send revised maps and the PDFs to staff. So probably you have access to that on your own system.
He's the guy who's talking.
There are, what I want to add to the conversation here is that there are many sites in town with one entrance. Some, as Attorney Macarello mentioned, were recently approved, and many older ones. I could give you examples like 36 Highland Hill Condo Complex off of Buckland Street, 38 units. Devonshire Condo, 20 units off of Route 10. 175 Berlin Avenue, 74 units. Glacier Way at Spring Lake Village was,
Hey, Sam,
yeah.
excuse me for a second. Folks, if you're not talking, so if you're not Sev, could you please mute your microphone? I can see a number of people who haven't muted their microphone. We're getting feedback. It's hard to understand what Sev is trying to say. And so if you could just please make sure that you mute yourself. Sorry, Sev, go
Yeah,
ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'm muting people.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sev, sorry.
All right. Rob, do you have access to that map that I was trying to put up on the screen?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Oh, okay, thank you. While I talk, maybe you could get it up. So I give you a few examples of existing current approved location and older approved location with many units on one entrance. In this proposal, the unit separation is about 20 feet in 4 cases and 22 feet to 30 feet in the rest of the units. The proposed HOD regulations in collaboration with staff were modified to be more in line with the current regulation, except in terms of setbacks and so forth, and except the 10 acres versus the 30 acres. The current HOD requires 30 acres. Our proposal has 10 acres as a requirement. The current HOD allows 8 units per acre. We're proposing 3.5 units per acre, which is in line with the existing age-restricted regulations. We received staff comments. We have revised the maps and provided responses in writing. Traffic concerns will be addressed by Mark Vertucci. If you have any questions at this time, I'll be glad to answer.
Let's let everybody do their thing and then we'll open it up to questions. So whoever's next on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to follow Seb's point very quickly, early on in the, actually on the 20th, we received, and prior to that, from the state marshal, approval for the initial site review. The purpose of my email to Chief Paul was to ask him if he had an opinion on the revised site plan review, and that response I did not get. And as Seb described, it's a wider entrance, more conducive to even the larger trucks, albeit the smaller trucks would be the ones used to fight the fire. So now the next professional is going to be Joe Versteeg. Joe is monitoring another, so he's on the phone. Joe, if you could unmute yourself
Here.
and jump in.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Versteeg. I'm a fire protection consultant based in Torrington, Connecticut. You have my CV. But just for those that do not have access to it, who are listening in for the public, I'll just briefly summarize that I'm a Connecticut licensed building official and a certified fire marshal and a certified fire protection specialist through the National Fire Protection Association. I was formerly with the Connecticut State Fire Marshal's Office for 20 years. And since 1996, I've been a consultant in fire and building code and accessibility safety. We've been retained by the applicant in this matter, and you have my one-page report that was dated today. We did look at this project from a code compliance standpoint and a fire department access standpoint. What's interesting to note here is that in Connecticut, the state rules and regulations of administrative agencies governing fire department apparatus access roads, the width of the road, the slope of the road, turning radii, all of those technical features related to adequately getting a fire truck up close to a building so that it can fight the fire properly, are contained within the Fire Safety Code and the Fire Prevention Code. By state statute 29-296, those regulations do not apply to 1 and 2 family dwellings. Each one of these buildings contains a maximum of 2 dwellings. Therefore, they're outside the scope of the Fire Prevention Code and Fire Safety Code, and they're only regulated by the International Residential Code, which is specifically designed to deal with single-family and 2-family homes and attached townhouses under certain configurations. So there are no regulations that apply to these for fire department vehicle access. Now, having said that, if this project were to involve not single-family homes, but were to involve a multi-story building, I mean multi-story meaning 2 or more, high as 80 feet, 80 stories, doesn't matter, and multi-units, anywhere from 3 to 5,000. The requirements in the Fire Safety Code and the Fire Prevention Code for fire department vehicle apparatus access are satisfied. The plan you see before you, those requirements are all satisfied. So although they're not applicable to this project, they are in fact compliant with the requirements for a much, much larger residential project. And having said that, it's my professional opinion that the project does not present any substantial danger or harm to a public safety interest. If the commission has any questions or wants to deal with
Hey,
it,
just open the door for you.
Again, we're holding off all questions until afterwards, and we'll proceed.
very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next person I'm going to ask to speak is Mark Bertucci. Mark is with us tonight. I want to also mention that widening this curb cut eliminates if there were a possibility for a second curb cut, which reading the minutes from the last meeting, there's some comments by commissioners that, one curb cut was too much. 2 would be obviously too much. So, Mark, from your additional information you're going to provide the Planning and Zoning Commission tonight regarding the traffic on West Street, I'm sorry, and on Landing Street. If you wouldn't mind just making that presentation now. Thanks.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Mark Bertucci, Senior Transportation Engineer and Vice President at Fuss & O'Neill, 146 Hartford Road in Manchester. We did prepare the traffic impact statement for the proposed development, and I just wanted to respond to a few of the comments that were raised at the last meeting by not only the commission but also the public. Just a couple of points I wanted to make. One comment was regarding traffic on a Saturday. There were some comments that weekends were very busy and that it wasn't looked at in our study. I just wanted to reiterate the volumes show that the highest peak hour of the entire week is the weekday PM peak hour. That's when we have commuter traffic and also residential and retail traffic on Queen Street is all peaking at the same time. I did obtain some data from the DOT from a 2016 study that was done north of the site on Queen Street, and I pulled some counts from the I-84 eastbound ramp intersection with Queen Street. They were Saturday counts, and Friday counts done at that intersection, and did confirm the weekday PM peak hour counts were about 200 to 300 cars more at that intersection, which is, as we know, directly north of the Laning Street intersection. So, the point here is our traffic study does look at the highest volume hour of the week, and is therefore most conservative with our findings. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the crash data. And as I mentioned last week, the review of the data that we looked at the most recent 3 years of data from the Yukon Crash Repository from our site down Laning Street to the intersection with Queen Street. Data showed there were no crashes during that period along the entire Laning Street site frontage. There was no abnormal crash patterns that I saw based on the volumes on Laning Street that would be exacerbated by the small amount of additional traffic that we are adding. I was provided with a list of crashes from the police department that went back actually a full 10 years. Industry standards only to look back 3, but they provided a full 10 years of data, and I combed through those crashes as well, and actually 80% of them were just minor fender benders, property damage only. There was a comment the last meeting that a lot of these crashes were very severe collisions. That's not borne out by the data. Most of these are minor collisions. Another thing I wanted to point out was the site driveway. There was a question on its proximity to the crest of the hill on Laning Street and the sight lines. As is mentioned in the traffic study, we do have adequate stopping sight distance approaching the site driveway in both directions on Laning Street. They meet and exceed DOT criteria for a safe egress from the site. The crest is about 400 feet east to the west of the proposed site driveway, and the requirement for stopping sight distance, the DOT requirement is 350 feet based on the measured speeds of the roadways. So we do have an excess sight distance above the DOT requirement there for safe egress. The intersection of Route 10 and Laning Street, there were some concerns about left turns out onto Queen Street. I did want to point out that the volume data that we collected at that intersection shows really almost nobody making that left turn out from Laning Street onto Queen Street. There were only 11 lefts, for instance, in the morning peak hour, and 172 rights. So the data is showing the vast majority of people that are coming out in that intersection are heading north, and they're getting onto Interstate 84 or heading north on Route 10. And there could be, as far as people who want to head south on Queen Street, I think that data is showing that most of the people in this area are actually choosing to travel south on Pleasant Street and going to Loper Street and getting the traffic signal to turn left onto Queen Street and head towards the center of town, which makes sense. It's going to be easier to make a left turn through a traffic signal than it is, crossing several lanes of traffic near that I-84 interchange. So I think, that is what people from this development would choose to do as well. They're almost equidistant routes, and that's the path of least resistance. So I think you're going to see more people taking Loper Street if they want to make a left and head south on Queen Street. Lastly, just wanted to reiterate one more thing about this development. It is a senior housing development. Residential developments are very low traffic generators, but the senior housing development are the lowest of the lowest traffic generators of residential land uses. So, for only 30 units here, again, we only have 17 trips we're talking about in the highest peak hour of the morning peak, 19 trips in the afternoon peak hour. So these are very small volumes. We're talking 1 car every 4 minutes on Laning Street that we're adding between the site and the intersection with Queen Street. And at the intersection with Queen Street, we're talking an additional 15 cars added to the intersection, which has 2,500 cars in the peak hour. So this is a de minimis increase in traffic. It's not an increase that will be noticeable to the drivers that are on the road today. And again, the conclusion of our traffic study is that this proposed development will not have a significant impact to traffic operations in the study area, and that the traffic can be safely accommodated on the adjacent road network. And with that, I can answer any questions later after we're done with the presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, just briefly regarding what Mark's testimony, or what he provided. The applicants obviously have been willing and remain willing to work with not only the Southington Police Department with any design changes if necessary, but also the Public Works Department. Perhaps if there's concerns, that can be brought to their attention regarding speed, maybe signage that would help. And also the one thing, I know there was one fatality. This goes back to January 3rd, 2015, which some of the residents spoke of. And as tragic as it is, unfortunately, my understanding, and I did get some reports, is that it was a pedestrian who was struck by a vehicle. My understanding is the pedestrian's vehicle, something malfunctioned, whatever. I believe he had gotten out of the vehicle and was trying to either walk to his house down the street, and he was struck by a vehicle. It wasn't a vehicle versus vehicle. That information was provided to me by the Southington Police Records Department.
Brian, I believe the driver there was actually charged with negligent homicide too, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
There, it was, and the tires were defective. It was a failure to keep right. So important thing is that crash was not indicative of a pattern on Lanning Street in the vicinity of the site.
Thank you, Mark. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, unless Seb has any follow-up, we have Mr. Miller. Brian Miller's our affordable housing consultant. I know Brian's with us. Brian, do you have anything to add that you didn't speak about on April 20th?
May say so. My name is Eric John Gable Sr. I live at 288 Lanning Street, and I was involved in a motor vehicle accident at the corner.
Hey, Eric.
And
Eric, it's not time for public input. This is the stage of the hearing where the applicant has an opportunity. Give us a little bit of time. We'll open it up to the public to give us input. So if you can just hold off for just a couple minutes, please.
thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brian Miller, are you with us? And if he's not with us, he has nothing else to add. So
I am with you.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Brian, anything to add?
No, I think, my part of this was fairly defined, and I didn't recall any questions about the affordable housing plan. So if there are any, I'm here to answer. If not, that's okay.
Please stay with us. Thank you. And
I will.
Circling back to Seb. Seb, I know you were able to show the site plan. Is there anything you want to add before we toss it back to the chairman?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Brian, and thank you to your team for going through that one more time in a much more concise manner anyways. Appreciate that. I'm going to open it up to commission members to give them an opportunity, and following that, we'll open it up to members of the public. So why don't we start with Commissioner Santiago?
Okay, I'm first this time. Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. One, I believe at the last meeting I had asked or requested if the Southington Police could come and comment on the traffic report, and at the least comment on their feelings of the topography of Lanning Street, what they see on Lanning Street from a traffic standpoint from lack of a better word, outside of accidents from near misses, because near misses aren't talked about. So I'm wondering, did the police decline? Because Attorney Meccarell is trying to make contact too. I formally requested them, so I'm wondering what's up with that. So Rob, any input on that?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
We had a correspondence received on Monday, May 3rd. Relative to your inquiry regarding the choice between one or two access points, in my opinion, it would always be safer to have two separate access points rather than just one. If one access point becomes blocked in the event of an emergency, the ability to access from a different area could be the difference between a major tragedy and a positive outcome. And that was from Chief Jack Daly, the local traffic authority.
Great. That's not what I asked him though. So I appreciate the chief sending that. I wanted the chief to, I didn't even bring up access points. Thank you for doing that. I brought up the things that I talked about and asked that someone from traffic or police physically be here. So I'm guessing they didn't want to do that.
Yeah, policy is, yeah, they issue their reporting, and that's their policy.
Okay, that's disappointing. What I would say with the traffic report, I think anybody does a traffic report during COVID doesn't capture volumes correctly. I would say anyone who's driven up and down Landing Street, either in the snow or the rain, cannot adequately gauge safety on Landing Street. I would say people don't go left because they don't prefer to go down Loper. They don't go left because it's dangerous. So thank you for proving that point to us. Because I think that solidifies that in regards to whether or not it is a dangerous intersection. Thank you for saying that it is. That's what I interpreted from that testimony. I would also, say, wintertime is horrible getting up and down that. Now, that's not the applicant's fault. You want to build where you build. It's your property. But that doesn't mean it's not currently an unsafe condition, as some of the residents have said. Now, so that's my 2 cents on that. And I didn't even think about access points, to be honest with you. For residents, though, so that you understand what we have here, though, because this application, why we have all these lawyers, no disrespect to all the lawyers, is that 830G is a state statute that supersedes local zoning and says for affordable housing, because towns were saying, I don't want affordable housing for a whole bunch of reasons. This says the only reason we can deny an 830G is health and safety concerns, which is why we're asking questions regarding health and safety. So that's why. So in this case, the applicant's saying, well, if we could have this by local zoning laws, great. If not, 830G stuff. So we're asking questions in regards to health and safety because that's the only reason we can, if we wanted to, deny any 830G application. So an 830G application is indeed different than other things that normally come before us. So I know the public likes to comment, and we appreciate everyone coming out, and that's great to be involved, and we appreciate all that. But just so you know what our charge is in regards to this particular application. So when we're asking questions only on a particular topic, that's why, just for edification for folks on that. I would also say in traffic, a fender bender may seem minor until it happens to you. So any crash or accident to me raises concerns because it doesn't happen everywhere. But it does happen in this particular part of town down the street from this particular place where we're going. And so, I'd like to hear a little more from other commissioners and other things in regards to this. I do appreciate though, the applicant making the changes that they did in regards to the text. Listened, I thought that was very good. I thought widening the entranceway was very good, putting the path there. You know, that doesn't always happen with these things. And so the applicant is willing to make some changes. I did appreciate that. So Attorney Miccarell, I do appreciate the effort there. So thank you for that. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Peter. Brian, I'll give you an opportunity to respond.
I can if I could, Brian, could I respond to a few of those items?
Yep, absolutely.
First comment was this traffic study was done during COVID. I think I mentioned the last meeting, the counts that we did were done in October 2019. That's what all the analysis was based off of. So this was all pre-COVID data. And as I mentioned, I confirmed and cross-referenced it with pre-COVID DOT data. So the volumes are solid here. Lots of comments on the weather. That is not, we don't, the DOT, state, federal standards, we don't look at a traffic condition during a snowstorm as how we determine whether or not something is safe. We look at it based on a typical condition on the road. That's how we do these industry standard, how we do these traffic studies. So I mean that is a condition we can't control. We can't control the weather here. All bets are off when there's a snowstorm. Queen Street's dangerous, Pleasant Street's dangerous, Loper Street's dangerous. They all are during a snowstorm, and people have to exercise caution when there's when conditions are poor on a road that's got a slope on it. So that's not something that is a factor here in determining whether or not this is going to have a significant impact to safety. The left turns out onto Queen Street being dangerous. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of unsignalized driveways on Queen Street, unsignalized roadways. This is no different than these other ones, but many of these unsignalized driveways, that's the only way they can get out onto Queen Street, and they have to make a left. As I just presented here, it is pretty much equidistant to go down Pleasant Street and go over Loper Street and access the traffic signal to make a safe left turn onto Queen Street. This development has that access, and I think you're going to see with a senior population, they're not going to choose to go down and wait a few minutes for a gap in traffic to make an unsignalized left when they can get the traffic. And lastly, the crash patterns on Laning Street, a number of crashes on Laning Street. I've looked at other roadways in the area. The number of crashes are very much in line with what we're seeing on other similar roadways in town with that volume. And you can pull it from the police department and take a look at it. There's nothing here that is a spike, nothing here that is jumping out as abnormally high compared to similar roadways with similar volume and similar classification in the town of Southie.
Is that it, Brian?
That's it for my response to for now.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Chairman, I'm not responding to Mr. Santago. Thanks.
Okay. Peter, you all set for now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Let's move to Commissioner Warwick.
This is Commissioner Gork. Mr. Chairman, are we focusing on just the zoning text amendment in this part, or general
We're
question
taking
for
it all
everything?
as one package, Jeff.
Okay. Well, first, I really like the changes, the clarification, especially on what a major transportation corridor is in the text amendment change. And my concerns previously on the other one, the original amendment change, the setback numbers being significantly lowered, now being normalized back to standard. I like that as well. Other than that, I don't have anything else besides my concerns to what Mr. Commissioner Santago said, and I guess I'll wait and listen for everybody else. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. Brian, any response or you want to just move on?
No, I appreciate the comments from all the commissioners.
Okay, let's move to Commissioner Albanese.
Hi, this is Commissioner Albanese, and I do not have any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. Commissioner Locks.
Commissioner Locks, I'm for everything that Peter said. I'm still not convinced that that road is as safe as the traffic report is reporting. I feel the same way. I mean, 2019, there's a lot more traffic in town compared to today. And when COVID is, everybody's out shopping, especially, let's say last weekend, I was in that area. There's a lot more traffic, and it's just going to get more and more. And so I am not convinced yet of that road is totally safe for this development. Other than that, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Brian, I'm just going to keep moving on and
Absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner Coles.
Good afternoon, good evening, I guess as the case may be. I do have a couple of questions. I kind of want to take off from where Commissioner Santiago left us. I want to touch back on the weather piece. You know, I get that we can't control the weather, but this is kind of a theme of my battery of questions that I'm about to go into is, while we can't affect the weather, what we can do is affect the amount of new hazards that will be at risk for any potential problem. My point being is that if there were 10 houses that were developed in this particular area, that's, you know, a lower number than if we were to do the 30 that is proposed. My big concern here is that, you know, as we look at risk assessment and we're trying to figure out, you know, how dangerous is this thing, because that's really what we're looking for, as Peter had mentioned, that this is the scope of how we can evaluate a proposal like this. You know, my concern is that a cumulative increase over years, not just in this particular proposal, but as new proposals come down year after year and decade after decade, it's a city of progress for a reason, because we continue to build more things and we continue to in the future build more things. So if we start off jumping ahead with however many more units that can be developed in this spot, then there'll be a snowball effect for other improvements that are going to be made. That's kind of one of the concerns that I have. And you know, I think I want to ask this question before we get too far, and maybe Sev can help us with this one. How many units, structures can be built on the existing property in an R80 zone as is currently defined? I'm looking for what the difference will be. So if it's as the founders intended as an R80 zone, you know, is that 5 or 10? Is it closer to the number that we're trying to build here, or what's the over under on that?
Seth, do you have a reply?
Brian, Attorney Maccarelli, can I respond to that?
Yeah, please.
I haven't done the study, you know, I don't have that in front of me, but it would be probably 8 to 10 homes with 4 to 5 bedrooms each, which will probably total the same number of bedrooms or more than the proposal we have in front of you. The other thing I hope you realize, if you build those kind of homes, there will be more curb cuts, multiple curb cuts, because for those kind of homes, we're not going to put a road in. We're just going to put individual driveways, which will start at the low point by the church and proceed easterly toward Dorrell Lane. Just wanted you to realize that.
No, you know, and I can appreciate that. Thank you. But the point that you're making for me is that there's 40% less houses, more than that. There's I'm bad at math, 70% less houses or so. So that's, I think that's something that we should put out in the atmosphere, just to kind of think about as we're looking at the safety of the overall project and what could potentially happen to this street in the decades to come. And I know it's not the responsibility of this particular proposal to worry about the future, but that is our, I think, objective also, to think about what's going to happen to Sullyton in the future. Steph, you got a comment?
Yeah. Maybe Mark Vertucci can address that. The 10 homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms will probably generate same amount of trips. Maybe Mark can interject into this.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that, Seb. You're absolutely right. 10 homes, a single family home generates twice as much traffic as a senior adult housing unit. You have, as Seb said, more bedrooms. You typically have multiple drivers and cars in the house. They have kids. They make more trips in and out, and they make more trips during the adjacent roadway peak hours than the senior housing, which typically peaks later in the morning and early in the afternoon. So would you see much of a decrease in traffic, even though it's less units? It would be, if there's a decrease, it'd be a very, very small decrease.
What's the age for the senior housing? Is that 55?
This is a 55 and older age restricted development.
I hope that when I'm 55, I can still make as many trips as a younger person. for the record.
I'm almost there, Caleb. Don't worry, you'll be able to.
Thanks. All right, so to continue on, I guess this is a question for Mr. Vestig. How many fire apparatuses would be required to attack a fire in one of the duplexes that were completely engulfed in a way that would prevent it from spreading to the other units, considering that they're built so close together? And let me just frame the question so you don't think I'm just shooting it off. Is I kind of want to make sure that with the one entrance and the width of the road, that enough apparatus will be able to get into the development to attack the fire, so that there's not more loss of property.
Sure. That's a difficult question, only because it has to do with when the fire is discovered, what's involved, what the delay is of the fire department, what the availability of the staffing of the fire truck crew would be. But let's say, for example, the occupants are out and the building is what we would call fully involved. It's burning. The distance between buildings far exceeds the minimum distances that the building code allows. The building code allows these buildings to be 5 feet off what we call an imaginary lot line. So if you were to draw a line between the two buildings, each face of the building would have to be 5 feet off of that. So you're only required to be 10 feet apart. And you could be even closer if you do certain things. But the access roads and the single entry point is more than adequate to allow sufficient numbers of fire trucks, even in a mutual aid capacity, to arrive and set up and effect aggressive ground line fire tactics. Now, if for some reason the ground decision is made that there's no sense trying to fight this fire, it's not worth putting out, it's that far gone, all we'd be doing is saving a basement, then certainly the efforts are put on protecting exposures with water sprays. But that's typical in every fire that we run into in not congested, but inner city, where the houses are out, more densely populated than a rural environment. So the single entryway is not a factor at all. All the codes allow a single entryway, and the codes give guidance as to when you might want to, or the conditions might warrant a second access point. And it's not this, oh, well, maybe it might be blocked. The code specifically talks about railroad tracks running across the single entry lane. And not that a railroad track runs across a single entry lane, but it might be out west where you have railroad trains that are 8 miles long and take 45 minutes to get through past a certain point. Or it might be involve a commuter stop where the train is parked there for a while. And that doesn't exist here. It might have to do with, is the single access road subject to flooding, either riverine or high tides or coastal flooding? And that's not the situation here. It also has to do with the potential for mudslides, which again, don't exist here. Or it has to do with large factories where at a certain point in time, 3,000 employees leave for the day or arrive for the day where they're not staggered. None of those conditions are present here and would warrant any more than the single entrance. Have I answered your question?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping for more of a definitive answer on how much apparatus would be required to get into that street. I can appreciate the fact that there's a lot of parameters that would dictate that by the commander on the ground to figure that out. But
well, I will tell you the rule of thumb is you can always fit more. And even if they're staged farther away, I mean, it's not uncommon to connect fire trucks to fire trucks and supply the water via hoses. So typical response is you get 2 engines, you get a ladder.
Okay.
And if you need more, you call for more.
And the intent for this wasn't to bring in a ladder in to fight these buildings because they're only 1 story?
Yeah, I mean, it's not typically necessary, but it's one of those things where if you have it, you bring it. But most communities fight 1 and 2 story building fires with the ground ladders that are affixed to the engines. They do not have aerial apparatus available to them unless it's on a mutual aid. And in many cases, that's a 20 to 30 minute delayed response as it comes from an adjoining town.
Understood. Thank you. So, and I guess my last question, and I think Peter kind of touched on this one too, but I just for my own benefit and clarification, I have to ask the question. And we had kind of spoke about this last week, and I think that Attorney Smith was going to give us a little bit more feedback on this piece. Is that if, and bear with me as I try to muddle my way through the question, if we don't approve the zone change to high density, then I guess my question is, I'm messing this one up again. If we don't approve the zone change, can you still build such density in an R80 zone? Even under an 830G? You can. I'm seeing a nod from Peter.
I believe, Peter Santiago, I believe, and Attorney Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe the applicant kind of structured it this way, that the first 2 things of a text change, which is Southington regs, and a zone change to correspond to the Southington regs that were then just altered, would put this application under, lack of a better word, Southington jurisdiction. But I believe, and Attorney Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, even if that did not happen, the 830G could still go forward because the 830G does not take into account current local zoning. Is that correct?
Brian Smith for the record. Well, the sort of in theory, yes, but not in the way this application is actually structured, because the HOD zone, as some of you may recall, came in as part of the Hillcrest application, and the HOD zone is an 830G zone. It's used typically throughout the state for that purpose. So essentially what the applicant is doing here is providing a 3-part set of applications, and the way it's set up, in my view, and the way I've seen it handled elsewhere, is that if the zone change in in this instance, because he's tied the application to them, then that would say that your site plan doesn't meet the HOD requirements and would be on that basis. That all has to still depend on the fact, all three of them would have to depend on the fact that it doesn't meet public health and safety concerns. That's the only legitimate way that a text amendment, a zone change, and a site plan could be denied under 830G, as Mr. Santiago was mentioning earlier. So I hope I answered your question.
It's a challenging concept to bite onto, but I think you summed it up as best as I could appreciate it. Thank you. Mr. Chair, those are my questions. Thank you for indulging me.
Okay, thanks, Caleb. Commissioner Coviello, welcome.
Hi, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I came a little late to the party today, so I have really no additional comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Commissioner Wolowski?
Yes, I mean, I myself, like Commissioner Coles, I'm trying to get my head around the zone change and the integrity of the zone change to the project, where, you know, it was zoned R80 for a reason, and are we trying to change the zoning simply to accommodate more units, or is there, you know, what is the hardship or the cause of that? And am I even asking that properly?
So, Attorney
Yes.
Smith or Taylor, I think that question was to you.
Yes, again, Brian Smith for the record. The application is a change of the zone to the HOD, which is an existing zone in Southington, which allows higher density than the R80 zone that it currently has. So that's the intent, and the applicant, to make it work for the applicant, of course, the HOD zone needs to have a lesser requirement for acreage, because when it was originally proposed in concert with the Hillcrest application on Route 322, that was a 30-acre zone requirement that applicant had put in. But they did it, as I said before, all of this is under 830G. So, but I don't think you can, the applicant may think they can cherry pick this, but I mean, it's going to either all rise or fall, all three of them, on the basis of this record. That's how I would handle it if I were the commission members.
All right, well, thank you for that. I guess I'm all set at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Brian, Attorney Macarello, I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in response to what Attorney Smith just outlined, if you want to.
No. At this point, I'd just assume listen to the remaining comments of the commission and staff.
Okay, that's fine. Commissioner Salka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Salka. Most of my questions have been answered, especially about the traffic study, et cetera, but the one question I have is concerning the septic system for these units. What happens each 55 and older unit is owned by the, is owned personally. What happens if one of the units failed, the septic system failed? Is it the owner's responsibility, the association's responsibility? And what happens if, in fact, multiple of those units fail over some period of time? Is the town responsible for any of that, or is that all part of the association and only the association?
Mr.
I'm not
Chairman,
sure who that question.
I could start, and then if Seb wants to finish, it's the homeowners association would be responsible. The unit owners would be responsible. And this is identical to the questions that this commission asked of the applicant for Pacer Lane. The HOA maintains the roads, they own the systems, they maintain the systems. We would in a complete failure, if you will, the sanitarium may ask that we connect to public sewers, which are, as we all know, right next door to this property. So that's a viable option. It could require extending the sewers up to this property, which is a matter of feet. But Sev, if you can go and maybe explain the Pacer Lane scenario, that the parallel with this property regarding that question.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, Seb Bovino, planner of Cratchit Jones. These systems are designed exactly like for a single home. The tests were very acceptable. There was nothing unusual about the testing of the soils and the percolation rates. Also, these systems have what's called a reserve area. If a system fails, most of the time the system gets rebuilt in the same area. But if someone wants to have a different area, we have an allocated reserve area, and those reserve areas will be used to build the new system. And it's just shown on the plan. And every time we do a unit, septic system will be designed according to the number of bedrooms, and it will be designed according to the elevations and the requirement of the state health code. And as far who's going to maintain it, it depends on how the language is in the association documents. It could be that the association gets assessed a certain amount. One system needs to be replaced or repaired. It can be repaired. It doesn't have to be replaced. Or the individual unit owners are responsible. So it's some language that needs to be addressed within their regulations. The town will not be responsible for this. The only time the town is responsible for this, if it happens, let's say, like in Mariana Islands a few years ago, they had 20 septic systems that were failing. So the town decided, okay, this is enough, we're going to extend the sewers. But normally this doesn't happen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I'm just going to stay on the septic system for a little bit. Seth, I think you mentioned this, but I want to just put it on the record. Any history of septic problems in that area that you know of?
Not that I know. We did the subdivision for Dorel Lane. There are 4-bedroom homes there, maybe some even more. I don't know. They have children. We have not had failures in that area. I think there was one halfway down on Dorel on the left side. There was a large home there and they needed repairs. Sometimes the system gets built by people that don't have the proper qualifications. They put the D box that's tipped or the tank is put backwards or something. And you need to look at it and repair it. And that's what happened to that property.
Okay. Jim Grappone, who's our town engineer, any knowledge of any problems with septic systems in that area, Jim?
Jim Grappone, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any, because they don't physically come to the engineering department. They go directly to the health department. So I'm not aware of any at this time.
Okay. Jim, just one more question. As our town engineer, you would typically perform percolation tests for such a system, correct?
Correct.
And that would include drilling holes in different various locations to make sure that the drainage of the soil was adequate enough in order to handle such a system, correct?
Correct. Usually the percolation holes are quite shallow. Generally, anywhere from 36 to 24 inches down. They do what's called deep pits, which basically gives a soil profile along particular lot locations where the septic system is going to be.
Okay. Do you know if that's been done here? And Sev, feel free to answer that question as well.
I can answer that question. The percolation and test pit results were submitted with the application. Each lot was tested, each unit was tested, and there was a letter submitted by the health department indicating that the property is suitable for septic systems.
And so if I'm hearing you correctly, Sev, those perk tests were performed throughout the area, various locations various steps to make sure.
On each system, not just in general. Each system, we staked the location and we did the perk and the test bit.
Okay, okay.
There actually
Thanks,
were two or three test bits for each system.
Okay, thank you. Moving to Joe, Verteek. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Joe, you made a comment that the single access poses what I wrote down as a quote, no safety concerns. Is that an accurate representation of what you said?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that with regards to fire safety? Is that with regards to police from a police standpoint, or is that regards to both?
The regulation that I talked about, the fire safety code and the fire prevention code, deal with fire department vehicle access. But from an emergency medical standpoint, EMS as well as police, the same rules would apply. I see no added concerns with a single access for police response.
Okay, are you certified or have a ability to speak with regards to police training or needs, or is it strictly, from what I saw, it was just strictly fire code?
Yeah, what I should tell you is that the state fire marshals at the time, office at the time when I was assigned there, was under the Department of Public Safety, and it was staffed by sworn state police officers. So I was a state police trooper from 76 to 96.
And my recollection, having been involved in state government for over 20 years, is that the Department of Public Safety has a variety of different bureaus, much like, for example, the Department of Transportation, and each one of those groups operates somewhat independently of the other. Is that your recollection as well?
The state fire marshal's office, if you're getting to the independence of the state fire marshal's office, the state fire marshal's office was a bureau within the Department of State Police.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Brian Macarella, I'm just gonna, you mentioned a couple different developments that have been approved by this Planning and Zoning Commission over the last couple of years on South End Road and Pacer Lane as a justification for not needing more than one accessible point into that development. One that you did leave off was the 830G that we approved this year, I believe. And with regards to that one, they did have two means of egress into and out of that development. So I just want to make sure that that shows up on the record. If I can move to.
Can I respond to that?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
Mr. Versteeg was also the professional for that application. So if he can shed some light on the reasons for that, I don't think he can speak to 45 Pacer or 726 South End Road. And it's just interesting that the police weren't asked to comment on those applications. But Joe, are you able to talk about the Liberty Street 8-30G, which?
No, not without refreshing my memory from the project file. No.
Okay, thank you.
We did, Brian. We did have Chief Paul come in and testify in front of the commission at the time. You know, not to worry. I'm sure you'll be given an opportunity to respond to that at a future date. So, if I can move on to the traffic study, Mark Ferreach. Am I saying that correctly? Probably not, right? Mark, you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut, correct?
That is correct, and also a professional traffic operations engineer.
Okay,
through IT.
and typically when you do a traffic study, would that study be signed or designated or stamped in some manner?
We do stamp them when required by the town. I'm looking at this one. I don't think I physically stamped this one, but I did prepare it.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was a reason why this one is not stamped.
No, there's no reason, and I could provide a stamped copy if necessary.
I mean, you saying you stand by it is good enough for me. So I'm going to turn to section 2.4. It appears on page 2. and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, it talks about how you conducted, and it was mentioned by other commissioners, that the traffic study was conducted on weekday morning and afternoon peak hours in October of 2019. Right?
That's correct. Yep.
So my question is, I think you've answered it, but I just want to clarify, there was no study done during weekend hours at that location, correct?
That's correct. But as I said, I pulled another traffic study that was done in the area so that I could gauge the comparison between the weekday afternoon and Saturday counts to confirm we had the highest. Yeah,
you did mention that. I recall that. Do you have a date or a year that traffic study comes from?
It was 2016, and it was done. It was provided by Gary Soika of DOT Planning. It was done for I believe, the Sinise development to the north on Queen Street.
So you mentioned that you pulled the traffic counts from a Saturday, I believe, area north of the intersection of Landing Street and Queen Street was what I recollect. Is that fair?
Yes, the counts were done at the intersection of Queen Street and the I-84 eastbound ramp, so the intersection directly north of Laning Street.
So anyone who was coming off of I-84 and taking a left, would they be accounted for in that traffic study?
So essentially, the counts at that intersection with the 84 ramps show the traffic coming north on Queen Street from Laning Street, and then going south from that intersection towards Laning Street. And those counts were approximately 200 to 300 vehicles in the peak hour, higher on a weekday PM than on the Saturday peak period.
Okay, and that wouldn't account for the intersection necessarily on Landing Street and Queen Street. It simply accounts for the intersection between 84 exit ramp and Queen Street traveling north, which is not part of what the Landing Street intersection is, the south of the 84 intersection.
Correct, but that count shows the volumes coming directly into and out of the Laning Street intersection on Route 10.
Okay.
The volumes on Route 10 account for the vast majority of traffic at the Laning Street intersection.
Okay. Thanks.
It was substantially higher on the weekday PM than Saturday.
Okay. I understand that that's what the traffic count says. As a resident of the town and one that travels that route pretty extensively, I can tell you that the bottleneck occurs on the weekend more than it does during the weekday. And I challenge you to go down to Spring Street and Queen Street on a Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and see how many lights you're going to sit through before you actually get through the light. Because the reality of being someone familiar with the road network down there, it's a sticking point for me. You also talked about minimal, I think your comment was that there were minimal left-hand turns at Queen Street at the Queen Street intersection. And in fact, your traffic study says that the left turn movement out of Landing Street experiences little volume during peak hours due to heavy opposing volume on Route 10. Again, I would suggest to you that if you look at that on a Saturday, that's going to look a little bit different than it does during a weekday. And by a little bit different, I mean a lot bit different. Now you talk about the labeling of the scale that LOS, right? LOS is level of service, right? And it's rated from A to F, A being the best, under 10 seconds of delay, F being the worst, which exceeds 50 seconds per vehicle, correct? And you go you go on to say on page 6, and I'm looking under section 5.3, you go on to say that the Landing Street approach to Route 10 is a level F, which means that there's more than a 60-second delay per vehicle at that intersection. Irregardless of a right or a left-hand turn, the level of service is F, which means that vehicles on Landing Street, correct me if I'm wrong, vehicles on Landing Street looking to turn onto Queen Street, either left or right, north or south, are experiencing on average in excess of 60 seconds of delay. Is that an accurate description of what you're saying?
No, the westbound left turn from Laning Street onto Route 10 South is a level of service F. As it is on virtually every unsignalized driveway on Queen Street, in this area. The westbound right turn from Laning Street onto Route 10 is a level of service E in the morning peak hour, and a level of service C in the afternoon peak hour.
Okay, so give me a gauge of what a C and an E are. What are we talking about in terms of timing?
Yeah, so your E is you're in the 40 to 50 second range, and C you're down into the 30 to 40 second delay exiting the site.
So just to round the numbers, we're looking at about a minute a vehicle, maybe a little bit less sometimes, maybe a little bit more. That's during weekday peak hours, which again I submit to you is not indicative of what the busiest time within that intersection is, a Saturday or even a Sunday, as people try to go out and do their shopping and that type of stuff. It's
yeah, you're down to like a half minute to 45 second range on average to make a right out, and obviously making the left out, as we've discussed, that's more difficult when you don't have the benefit of a traffic signal. So what you see here is people will gravitate, and they have there's several signals on Queen Street, and when a driveway or a road has access to a signal, you want to make a left, that's where the traffic is going to gravitate to during the peak hours, because you're going to be able to get out a lot more quickly and safely when you can get to a traffic signal. I think the point I was trying to make earlier is this development has access to Loper Street to get that signal if they want to make a left-hand turn out. And that's I think that's
it's
what
not
the
an
volumes
equal,
are.
Mark, it's not an equal distance. You said that a couple of times. That's not true. It's not an equal distance, and people don't do that. People are going to take a right out of that development.
The volumes are bearing out that people are taking Loper Street, because there's a much heavier left turn volume coming out of Loper than there is Laning Street. So maybe not equal distance, but I think if you go time wise, you're going to find that's quicker, and people will take the path of least resistance if they need to make a left onto.
And you mentioned a couple of times that if people have the option, they're going to go to a signalized intersection in order to get onto Queen Street. You've made that statement a couple of times, correct?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I certainly do that myself when I have the opportunity.
Okay. Mark, can you tell me where are there unsignalized intersections outside of the Landing Street, Queen Street intersection? Where's there an unsignalized intersection on Queen Street in Southington?
There's numerous driveways along Queen Street, unsignalized private driveways, access driveways, commercial driveways. I could pull up a Google map here and we could look at it if you give me a moment.
Chairman, while he's looking
let's start looking at the street, because in terms of streets, there are none. There are no other unsignalized intersections with Queen Street in Southington other than at Loper Street. And there's another development just north of Home Depot driveway there. That's a small neighborhood, which is part of the Sinise development. That's why that was done. That's an unsignalized driveway. But otherwise, we're looking at businesses. And this commission has made a deliberate attempt over the last decade plus to try to minimize any curb cuts and provide access ways between businesses. We just had one across the street at Worldwide Liquor in the old shop right there, and the Hartford Healthcare Center there, to make sure that people had the option to go stay off of Queen Street in order to get out at a signalized intersection with ease. So we don't typically do that. And I live on Hobart Street, which is on North Main, right? Signalized. The next one would be Flanders, signalized, and that's at the start of the next one would be Loper.
If I could interrupt, there's Garden Street, which is unsignalized. Queen Terrace is unsignalized. Pleasant Park Street, these are the condo association down the road, is unsignalized. And there's a number of many commercial driveways, some of them which actually have more volume than Laning Street at times.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with that. Let's move on though. Under 5.2.
Okay.
This is site distance analysis. The very last paragraph. I'm just going to read from it. For the 85th percentile design speed of 44 miles per hour on a level terrain, 349 feet of stopping site distance. I assume you meant not if, but is required. Greater than 349 feet of stopping site distance is provided on Landing Street approaching the site driveway from both directions. Therefore, adequate stopping site distance exists for a driver to be able to safely react, slow down, and stop in advance of a vehicle turning out of the site driveway. I'm not sure what you mean when you say that that site has level terrain, because I looked at it a number of times in the last 3 weeks to see where I can figure out where the level terrain is, and I don't see it. So my question is, given the pitch of the roadway, both in terms of its turning and its trajectory or pitch up or down, what is a safe site distance for a roadway like that? It's not level. It just isn't.
As I presented before, it's 400 feet from the proposed driveway location to the crest of the curve to the west. So as you're coming up to the crest, you come over the crest, you have 400 feet distance to the driveway of clear line of sight. I mentioned the DOT requirements 350 feet. So we're about
350 feet on level terrain, Mark, correct? On level terrain, it requires 349 feet, as you stated here. That's not level terrain, though, is what I'm saying to you. And I'm saying,
it is at that point from the crest to the site driveway, it is less than the 3% grade in the highway design manual that would constitute level. So those numbers are accurate for the grade of the road between the site driveway and the crest that I'm referring to. We're not on the slope here of Lanning Street that starts to go down significantly towards Queen Street.
Well, I know exactly
by the time you get there, the grade is more significant. And actually you're coming uphill there, so the site distance requirement would actually be even less, because it takes lesser to stop when you're on an upslope for your stopping site. So, that number is fairly conservative, actually.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you that that's, you know, given the design on that roadway and the way that it sort of turns around and the pitch there, that it's, you know, I'm just trying to get an answer of what would be considered an adequate safe distance, and you seem to be sticking to your guns as 349 feet.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was field measured. I mean, we measured this in a field with a cone and a measuring wheel to, you know, line of sight 3.5 feet on the driveway approach to 2 feet above ground for the for object, you know, basically, you know, consistent with the criteria specified in the DOT highway design manual. So it was all measured. These are field measurements. The requirements I'm talking about are DOT requirements for the speeds on the roadway, which were also measured.
Okay, I'm gonna open it up to members of the public. I have one final question on the traffic study, and basically for the whole, for probably the whole team to sort of just contemplate and certainly react to if they'd like to. But with a level F or E or C, and the backup that occurs on that intersection between Landing Street and Queen Street, which I think every town resident probably has experienced, and I'm pretty certain that every commissioner has experienced, and I'm sure that Attorney Macarello has experienced it as well. How does that affect the ability of public safety apparatus, vehicles to get in and out of that area and get to where they want to go? So if you got a queue backed up 10 cars deep at that intersection, and a police vehicle or several police vehicles, usually in an emergency, are trying to get out of there or in there, I'm not sure how that's going to happen, and that will translate all the way down to Queen Street, where people are trying to take a left as they're traveling south on Queen Street, take a left on the Landing Street. it's going to back up because it does all the time. And it's, again, especially on a weekend, it's scary. And I just want you all to start thinking about that and give me a response, or give the commission a response at some point. So the public hearing here is going to be continued into the next meeting. I can give you a preview on that one. I have a reason for that. I want to have as I said at the beginning, our first in-person meeting in over a year is going to be on June 1st, which is our next meeting, the day after Memorial Day. We're going to continue this public hearing at least to that date, because I think that the dynamic of an in-person meeting is much different than this is. And I think that we all want the benefit of that. And I'm intent on that. So it's going to happen. I don't know if you want to respond to my question, or if we just want to open it up to members of the public at this point.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman, Brian Maccarello.
Yep.
My understanding from speaking with staff today was that the June 1st meeting will be a hybrid meeting. It'll still have a Zoom component, a web component, in addition to in person. Is that correct?
We probably will be offering that, Brian. Correct. Yeah.
That's fine, because I won't be physically present, but I'll be on the Zoom. The rest of the team members may as well.
Rob Phillips, that's the plan.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate. And Brian, by the way, I appreciate your flexibility with the zone text amendment. I still will ask town staff to take a look at the revised number and give us an idea of where else that might apply. I just want to make sure that we're hitting what everybody wants, as opposed to opening up a Pandora's box. I think it can get kind of messy if we do that. Before we open up to members of the public, Rob Phillips, we have a number of correspondences that were received over the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to ask you to read each of those into the public record, please.
I don't have everything in front of me, but I do have one more I wanted to read.
Sure, go ahead.
That's James Paul, Fire Chief, Fire Marshal. In regards to the proposed development, landing 830G, affordable housing, and the number of access points needed, 2 access points are safer and allows more area for fire apparatus to enter and exit in the case of emergencies. And that's dated May 3rd.
Okay, and we have that posted on the website, Rob, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to open it up to members of the public, and as we do traditionally, we'll open it up first to any member of the public who would like to testify in favor of this application. Again, please identify yourself, give us your address so we have it for the record, and share your thoughts with us. So this is for people who are in support of the application. One more call for anyone in support of the application. Seeing none, we'll open it up to any member of the public who is in opposition to this application. I think we might have a couple people out there, so let's try to do this in as orderly a fashion as possible. So if you can just, first of all, you got to unmute yourself and identify yourself, give us your address. I see John Brickley there. He's got his hand up. So John, we'll start with you. And then after John, we'll move to Dave and Mary Beth DiOrio. I'm going to try to just move through it as best as I can. So if you want to talk at the end of the next person, just raise your hand for me. If I can see it. If you're on a phone, we'll open that up towards the end. So.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I appreciate it. I also believe that raising your hand from my days of elementary school certainly helped me in this fashion. My wife, Jennifer, is next to me as well. Just to give a little bit of background, I know that on the website, I've already opposed it in written form, but I also wanted to put a name with the face to the rest of the commission. My wife and I, we come from a different scenario. We had no ties to Southington. We have no family members that lived in Southington, didn't grow up in Southington, but we loved the town and we loved Doral Lane. So we moved here a year and a half ago. We have an 8-month-old daughter, and we're expecting our second child by the end of the year.
Because nobody knows that.
Because nobody knows that, but except the entire town of Southington. So, but with that being said, with that being said, had we known that Doral residents have had the burden of this land since 2007 and knew how dangerous of a street Landing has become for us over the last year and a half, we would have never moved to Southington. We would have gone to Farmington. We would have gone to West Hartford. We would have gone to somewhere else just based on those two components alone. A couple of the safety issues I do want to bring up. One thing before I get to the traffic scenario, the one thing I wanted to address is the current woods right now absorb the water runoff, but by putting those buildings up, they're disturbing the floodplain and they're going to cause water runoff issues for those houses like ours on Doral downhill from the project. So I know that everyone is speaking about the traffic issues. I wanted to give the flooding issues just attention as well. From a traffic standpoint, I feel, Mr. Verducci, you're going to be getting beat up pretty good tonight, and I apologize for that. But having lived here for a short period of time, the reason why everyone can't make a left out of Lanning onto Queen Street is because it's virtually impossible. I joke all the time, if you believe in God, try to make a left off of Lanning onto Queen Street. It's impossible. And we've talked about the driveways and access roads. We're missing the big picture here. We live next to a major highway. It's not as if we are a mile down from the road. We live literally within, 750 feet of a major highway where congestion gets built up on the weekends, during the weekdays. We saw numerous fender benders in our year and a half that weren't reported to the police, but they were taken care of by the two individuals themselves. It is a true hazard that needs to be addressed. And the reason why everyone on Doral specifically goes to Loper is because obviously it's a much safer way to do it. However, when you go on to Loper, now you've got Aspen Way that's got a development, Willow Creek Lane that's got a development. That's only getting congested more. One of the things though, and my wife I know wants to touch upon this as well, is to use the sporting analogy, you can't change the rules of the game midway through the half. And what I mean by that is this was designated, if it's my understanding correctly, an R80, and it's trying to be changed to an HOD. And I've been trying to wrap my head around this, but at the end of the day, it was designated for residential use, and there is no need to try to change it last minute to an HOD. That's one of the reasons why we're very much opposed to this. Two other things. One, we saw in a referendum, granted it's a greater size, that the town of Southington, people here do not want more construction, more housing. As Mary Beth would attest to, my neighbor, it's not a city, it's a town. At the end of the day, it was a 3-to-1 margin that people did not want this type of housing. And I know I'm talking about the golf course. And lastly, because I know emotions get high in this scenario, I just want to leave the members of the commission, and I'm saying this in front of my wife. If you're my age, you're 37 years old, you have 2 kids, how would you feel about the potential with a 55 and older community being built that your in-laws should be within 500 feet of it? I just want that to be known. Lastly, I thank everyone for the time and allowing me to speak on the matter.
Well, John, speaking for myself, and congratulations to you and your wife, but, considering you're going to have some young kids, maybe it's not such a bad idea.
True.
But, Jennifer, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to it.
I was just going to say, I know the focus is health and safety. I just think it's unfortunate that the applicant had to use a state statute as a loophole to change, the rules. So that's frustrating for us. But I think the only other thing is I can attest to this Saturday alone that I probably sat 4 lights to get a right out to Queen Street. So, there's definitely a buildup of cars. And, people fly around that corner. And when you're sitting there, 8 cars deep, people come up behind you real quick because they don't expect the line to be that long. So, I do think it's a safety issue. I know someone said the topography is fine. That road's crazy out there. So I think the traffic, if we're going to focus only on health and safety, the traffic is definitely a concern. So
John and Jennifer, let me ask you a couple questions, actually, if I can, is that, do you have public sewer and water at your residence?
No, we have septic.
Septic and
Do you
private
have
well.
any problems at all?
We have not experienced in terms of septic or private well issues, no.
You've been there for a couple of years. Would you say that the traffic at the intersection of Lanning and Queen Street is higher, lower, or about the same during the weekend as compared to the weekday?
Insanely higher.
When? During the weekend or the weekday?
On the weekend, it's higher.
Okay, okay, thanks. Any other questions for members of the commissions from Mr. and Mrs. Brickley? Seeing none, let's move on to Dave and Mary Beth Diorio. From there, I got a guy, Joseph, sitting there, so he's next, and we'll follow up Joseph with Jim O'Hara. How's that? Mr. and Mrs. Diorio, just got to unmute yourself there. I see your lips moving, but I don't see hear any sound. Not working. David, Mary Beth, why don't you work on that? I'm going to go to Joe just to try to keep it going, and then after Joe, we'll come back to you. Okay. Okay, Joseph, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the feedback. I would just like to thank John and his wife for what he said earlier. No, it's not.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of feedback here.
Yeah, all I did was unmute myself. It's not the phone. All right, so a couple of things are going on. First off, you've done all these traffic studies, and we live here. So you don't see things like this. Okay? Where there's cars flipped around, people running into the woods away from the cops, people hung up on guardrails, having to go outside at 3 o'clock in the morning. So you guys can say whatever you want. We live here. There's children here. There's elderly people here. And I'm sorry for the feedback. I don't know where it's coming from.
I can't seem to figure out what the problem is here.
Commissioner Walowski, he's on twice.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I am.
We just get everyone else to mute, perhaps. That might help.
He's the only one not muted. Must be on twice.
I agree with the commissioner. I see Joseph on a video and on phone. That could be a problem.
I apologize.
All right, I'm just trying to.
Give us a second, Joe.
Go star 6. Yeah, that's not working.
Did I mention I'm looking forward to the in-person meetings yet?
Yeah.
Joseph, go ahead. We just got to keep this moving here. You're muted, Joe. I'm looking at the screen here. You're muted there, so maybe you just unmute there.
All right, how about now?
We're still getting feedback, but just.
All right, I'll be brief. Has any correlation been made to the Southington Housing Center on Academy Street as far as a single entrance where they're entering and exiting? I've had friends there. Very, very difficult to get in and out. I know that's a multi-story building. That's different from this. But has any correlation been made against how that functions as part of our community? Secondarily, the 90-degree turn on Lanning Street is extremely dangerous. I've lived here for several years. There's been so many accidents here that are not reported, and 8 in 3 years. So the statistics that you're getting from the police department are not accurate. I've talked to the police officers that are here, thanking them, wonderful people, for watching our road and stopping people from speeding. It's not a good thorough way. So now we're going to put a senior housing center that's going to be traveling with bus routes to and from the Southington Senior Center. You're going to be getting food deliveries. Children's school buses. It's there's a lot more going on than what your statistics are telling you. I'm very, very concerned with the traffic on the road. I don't think anything can be done with the entranceway to West Street, but the back streets here are congested and dangerous. We've had people come up and get their car stuck on the guardrail. There's not enough adequate signage for the guardrail, especially to slow down. This is right up the street from that. I'm also concerned about the septic system because I'm, like the nice lady before was saying, I'm downstream. And I know you do your perk tests. I grew up in family building houses, so I know all about perk testing. Usually they're more than 5 or 6 feet deep, not 2 to 3 feet deep. But there are elderly people here, and we are very, very concerned with the rate of traffic flow, especially on Friday nights and Saturday nights. And I'm also very concerned with the fact that this is an elderly housing community that are condos, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I really never heard of an elderly community, condo community, where there was an age limit
And low income.
and low income. I'll mute. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Joseph. Joseph, for the record, could we just get your address, please?
469 Lanning Street.
Okay.
I'm right on the curve. I can't tell you how many times I've gone out with cars coming off of the curb, hitting the guardrail, flipping upside down on my property.
And a lot of these accidents aren't reported to the police. They hobble away with their cars damaged and no reports ever made.
We've had people,
We see it.
we've had people leave their vehicles because of alcohol and drugs and run into the woods. It's difficult. It's difficult. And I'm going to agree with the other gentleman who said this is zoned R80. My home is zoned R80. The horse ranch behind me is zoned R80. It's very rural. We shouldn't change it into a city or a suburban district.
Maintain it as a town.
Joe, I'm going to ask you the same question I just asked of Jennifer and John. The intersection at Queen Street and Landing Street, would you say that's more or less congested or busy during the weekends as opposed to the weekdays?
I agree with Jennifer. It's more on the weekend. But again, we're talking about an elderly housing community. They're going to be dealing with the other side of Southington High School, going back and forth with the senior citizen center.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Let's go back to the Diorios, who I'm hoping to resolve the issue that they had. Dave?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Give us your address again.
I am Dave Dorio, 34 Doral Lane. Still experiencing.
Yeah, you know what, maybe you should go ahead, Dave.
But I'd like to add that
I need to be muted. I apologize.
You know what, guys, we're gonna get off video and you can just have to look at the eyeball because so I'm gonna get out of here and we're gonna use our other computer. All right, go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry, can you hear better now?
Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to add that my wife and I are lifelong Southington residents. We both graduated Southington High School. Our parents still live here in town. And being on Doral Lane, we have a new driver in our house. Our son just started driving, and at 16 years old, he's forbidden to go down to the bottom of Landing Street and take a left. To expand on what Mr. Santago said, we tell him always to use Loper Street for the traffic light. But what a lot of people are overlooking here is that Loper Street itself is being developed heavily. And there are a lot of homes still to be built on Loper Street, a lot of single family homes. And those cars are going to be also accessing Loper to use that light. So my feeling would be that now cars will be backed up the hill because nobody's going to make the light on the first shot. And the frustrations are going to cause people on Lanning and Doral to go ahead and make an attempt to get out of Lanning Street, either left or right. Because again, the light over there will be congested. I also noted that Mr. Bertucci, his study was done in 2019, and then he pulled additional traffic studies from 2016. The town has grown so much from 2016 until now that I don't think that traffic study could be accurate. But the amount of cars that are on Queen Street now. And I also feel that the R80 zoning should stand in a town where $500,000 homes are sold in a matter of hours and days. It's hard to keep inventory in this town. I don't feel a need for low-income senior housing, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, it's my turn, Mary Beth Dorio, 34 Doral Lane. So I'm just going to reiterate, as the commission knows, I've been very active and participating in these meetings regarding this request. So a couple things. I'm going to go back and just stick to facts. I think facts are the best way to, communicate my position, my husband's position, and I think others' position. So first of all, as I told the commission, I did read through the Town of Southington zoning regulation, that 200-page document. I did focus on section 308. And as I said, that document was drafted in 1957, and it was amended and adopted and amended through December 15th, 2020. So I focused on section 308, the HOD language. And I'll be very candid. I just had an opportunity to read the revised proposal that was posted on the web today. And my position, two things. First and foremost, that parcel of land was zoned R80. When the developer and or owner purchased it, they knew what that zoning was. And I know developers understand what the guidelines are in a town as it relates to zoning. So it seems to me that that language in section 308 is almost being managed to an exception, this exception. The way that, first of all, you're cutting it from 30 acres to 10. I know that there were some changes, and to be honest, I worked all day, so I didn't have a chance to dive into it, but I will. I feel as though, the language and the proposed changes are really geared towards this exception for this development on Lanning Street. So I first and foremost, and I want to understand this better, because if the commission decides to refuse the edits to the regulations, does that cut this off? So, and I didn't understand that. I think Attorney Smith was talking about it. If the zoning language is not changed in section 308, is this dead in the water? Are you able to build? So I'm going to just throw that out there again. Can you build that housing project there? Number one. Number two, I also spent some time reading the Affordable Housing Appeal section 8-30G. So, and I respect the fact that the commission, it is the burden of the commission to prove the decision to reject this proposal. So I understand that, very clear. But it also has stipulations around what basis the commission can decline the appeal. And that decision can be declined if the zoning change was necessary to protect the public interests in health, safety, or other matters that a municipality may legally consider number one, and such interests outweigh the need for the affordable housing. So I have more research to do, but again, I understand the fact that you can reject this appeal based on the public interest in health and safety. And it's very clear that the individuals who have participated in this meeting, the individuals who have written letters that are posted on the website, as well as the individuals that live on Doral Lane and Lanning, clearly feel that this is a risk to their public interest in health as it relates to the traffic on Lanning. The other thing I wanted to mention as it relates to traffic is the speed on Lanning. So it's one thing to have velocity on Lanning, but let me tell you something. Cars whip up and down Lanning all the time. And, you know, from my perspective, I'm a worker, I'm in the age group of I'm working every day. I leave in the morning, I come home in the afternoon. If you have a 55 and older community, maybe those residents might be older. They have the ability to move. They're probably going to use Lanning more than we do on Doral, because primarily we're working families, most of us. So that said, you have to consider speed on Lanning Street, and it's curvy. The only other comment I do want to make, being a lifelong resident of Southington, I'm very familiar with Pacer Lane. I'm familiar with South End Road. I'm familiar with Liberty Street. That's a completely different demographic than Lanning Street. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. But again, I respectfully want to put on record that I do oppose the zoning change, and look forward to meeting everyone in person if this is going to be now deferred to June 1st.
Thanks, Mary Beth.
That's all. Thank you.
The public hearing will be continued. We're going to go to Jim O'Hara. Do we have anyone else out there? I got
Yes, I would.
a Jason and a Carrie, and so
Hi.
Jason and Carrie, you're next, and I got a Kathy Riley, and then we'll circle back after that. So go ahead, Jim. Give us your address, please.
My name is Jim O'Hara. I'm at 55 Doral Lane. I've been probably one of the longest residents here on Doral Lane, as my bald head and white hair will attest to. I think I've been here 26 years. And certainly over those 26 years, the traffic down Lanning Street has become much worse than it was when I first moved here. I still work, and when I go to my office in the morning, I could take a right out of Doral and go down Lanning and get on the highway, but there is a huge pileup of cars even to go right on a weekday. So I go left and I take a more circuitous route to get to my office, just because it saves time, because I would be sitting backed up on Lanning Street. And that's been many years now, but it's certainly worse than ever with all the other developments that have occurred in this area. Close to the high school, everywhere you look, land that used to be pastures now is homes. And now, as other people have mentioned, we're building homes on top of Nardelli's on Loper Street. And to go to Loper Street to make the left, obviously, I think we all do that. Just as my neighbor John said, it is impossible to make a left out of Lanning. And as you said, Commissioner, it's not equidistant, it's longer, but it may save time just because it's impossible and it's not safe. The other thing I would say is, I'm concerned about, we are all on well and septic here. And contrary to what I think Mr. Bovino may have said, those of us on the west side of Doral Lane, our wells abut the development. And I'm not sure exactly in the site plan, because I'm not sure I can read it completely, where the septic systems are in those condos. But I think those of us on the west side of Doral are concerned about our wells and what effect the septic systems in the property development might have on our wells. So I think that's another health concern. Certainly the safety, I can recall at least 2 fatalities on Lanning Street since I've been here, and many other accidents around the bend, as somebody spoke to, one of which was my own mother on a Thanksgiving day several years ago. So I think what we're all saying, all of us in the neighborhood, is there are legitimate health and safety concerns, and we all feel somewhat, I don't know what the right word is, you know, cheated, or the fact that the zoning change is being proposed when people, you know, bought land, built homes, moved here, expecting that our neighborhood was an R80 zoning, and to change it when all the residents in the area oppose it for the convenience of one person. And I'm not sure how the commission weighs the interests of, you know, the neighbors versus the interest of the developer in that regard. And like other people have mentioned, I wonder if this were not part of an affordable housing development, you know, would this be, you know, denied if this were just other housing units, or is it just because it's being couched in this affordable housing development to try to bypass what the Southington local regulations might otherwise call for, and have it just get in under the back door under a state regulation? So I think all of us feel a little bit uneasy about that as well. I think, you know, children, people on bicycles, obviously that happens. There are still young kids in our neighborhood. I think the entrance to the development also, as you said, Commissioner, is anything but level. You know, it is sometimes a challenge to make a left turn out of Doral Lane because the line of sight is impaired by the hill. And it's people come fairly fast. You have to turn out quickly. I often turn out and I straddle the median because I'm afraid of somebody coming up from behind me who's flying and is going to hit me from the rear just as I pull out of my street. I think similar things would be an issue with this development as well. So I want to go on record. My wife would go on record as well as opposing this. And I thank you for your time and consideration, and we'll let somebody else speak now.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you coming out tonight and spending time with us and letting us know how you felt. We're going to move on to Jason and Carrie. I think it's McFarland. And from there, Kathy, someone who's identified as Kathy Riley, although it does not look like Kathy Riley. But,
that's my wife.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll move on to there, and then I got a Sandra Anderson who's raising her hand, so she'll follow Kathy's husband. So, Mr. and Mrs. McFarland, I assume. If you can give us your address and let us know what you think.
All right, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jason McFarland, and we live at 426 Lanning Street, very close to Doral. And we have our concerns, and we agree with most of what was shared with the commission tonight about the concerns, specifically the volume of traffic on Lanning and the speed of traffic on Lanning. You know, having lived here almost 10 years, we've witnessed very similar incidents to what has been shared tonight. Speeding, accidents, mostly, not reported, people running away from cars, leaving their cars. We're the family of 3 young boys, and, we don't let them near the road, because of the cars, because of the speed, and particularly cresting that hill near Doral Lane, coming out of our driveway, I'm concerned, people pulling out of Doral, people coming down the hill, crossing the median. So, that's a concern of ours, as well as exiting to Queen Street, the left and the right. I think someone had mentioned it earlier on in the conversation. It's a gamble each time, turning into Lanning as well as exiting Lanning. So, we just wanted to kind of voice our concerns, and as well as the R80 zoning. We purchased specifically because of the property, because of our home, because of the proximity to our neighbors. We enjoy where we live. We love Southington. We hope and plan on staying here for a while, and to kind of change it halfway through and kind of, change the game, as was said, is a concern to us. So, I don't know if you want to say anything else, but, we.
Yeah, and just to speak to the speed issue again,
it's a 25, and we have 3 little boys, and we're out there on the bus stop every morning and every afternoon. And I can tell you that there are cars doing double, even more than the speed limit. And so it's not 25, you know, my jaw drops sometimes at the speed of cars that's on the street. So there's that issue. There's also, you know, as my husband said, you know, trying to make a left or a right onto Queen Street is a hazard right now. So I just can't imagine
Increased traffic would just make
increased
that even more
traffic.
difficult. So
It's, you know, it's definitely, and, you know, we're right before the almost 90-degree turn. And we have, you know, heard in the middle of the night crashing. We've listened to a lot of, you know, accidents in the middle of the night, even during the day. It's definitely
so it is a safety concern.
a
So
safety
that's
concern.
kind of that's our
Absolutely. So we
both-
wanted to make sure that we voiced that opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. McFarland. We're going to move on to Kathy Riley's husband.
Yes,
And
hi.
he'll be followed by Sandra Anderson. Is there anyone else who wishes on video who wishes to speak? If they could raise their hand, then we'll open it up to people who are waiting on the phone. So go ahead, Mr. Riley.
Yes, hi, thank you. Michael Riley. I live at 58 Doral Lane here with my wife Kathleen, or Kathy. I wanted to address, you know, like most other people who've spoken today, I want to speak against this plan, particularly as it pertains to the traffic portion of it. I understand that the developer has proffered some type of traffic study by a traffic engineer, you know, which purports to indicate that this development would be safe. I just want to point out to the commission that the traffic engineering profession is not one that's exactly covered itself in laurels when it comes to considering pedestrian safety. They're responsible for traffic sewers like the Silas Deane Highway, the Berlin Turnpike, and even Queen Street, where, you know, one would more or less be taking their life into their hands if they attempt to navigate it as a pedestrian. So when we have this study which purports to claim that this development would not, you know, make things unsafe, I have a very hard time believing that it's given any real legitimate consideration to pedestrians. I mean, we don't have any crosswalk here. We don't have any traffic control signals on Lanning Street. When it comes to crossing out of Doral Lane in particular, I like to walk. You know, the crest of the hill completely blocks the view of traffic coming from Lanning Street from my right. So, you know, I'm basically gambling every time I walk out that somebody's not going to be flying over that hill that I can't see. You know, so again, I just have a very hard time believing that, you know, from a safety perspective, that the pedestrians, who I think need to be considered, right? We don't just live in a place where people use cars. We have people who bike and we walk too. That this is in any way safe for them. The fact of the matter is the street is already unsafe for pedestrians and bikers. I don't see how it, you know, this development would do anything but aggravate this situation. You know, to just as an additional point, I mean, if this developer wants to build a denser development, you know, I'm not a NIMBY. I'm not someone who's opposed to development. I would point them to the big empty lot that the town seemingly can't develop down on Center Street, a place where we have, you know, quite a bit more infrastructure dedicated to dealing with the volume of people that we would have from something like this, rather than what's essentially a converted country road. There's town streets, people can walk and things like that. So if they want their dense development, there's certainly a place for it. It's not on a, you know, country street that never was meant for the traffic that it already has and isn't safe for pedestrians or bikers to begin with. I mean, I'll echo everyone else. You know, I have young children who ride bikes. I mean, they're just not allowed to ride their bike, you know, anywhere near the end of Doral Lane. So it's just not safe. And what they're proposing isn't going to make it safe. I mean, if the commission is going to consider approving this for a second, I mean, frankly, they should do so with the condition that sidewalks be put in, you know, on a significant stretch of Lanning Street. a crosswalk should be considered, and stoplights or stop signs should be considered. But to put it on the street as is, it is lunacy in my opinion. So that's my say. And if anybody has any questions or concerns, I'm here.
Okay, thanks, Mike, for coming out. We're gonna move on to Sandra Anderson. Is there anyone else after Sandra who wishes to speak? I got a Steve Uzga who's raising his hand. So Steve, you'll follow Sandra. Sandra, give us your address, please. Go ahead.
Well, seriously, you want to develop a dense development? There's a place for it. It's not there.
This is Sandra Anderson, 246 Lanning Street. My husband and I have both spoken previously about the hazardous driving, walking, running conditions of Lanning Street. I also have a question about the septic tanks for the proposed area. The site plan, there's, I don't know, those markings in back of the buildings. Our well is between our house and Lanning Street. Has a study been done on that? I know apparently studies have been done with the proximity to the wells on Durrell Lane, but have studies been done on the distance between the septic tanks on this development and, for instance, the front of our house? I'd like to know, and what kind of septic systems are you proposing? I know in densely populated areas, they have specific ones that are very expensive and that are frequently monitored. Is that the type of septic tanks that are going to go in, or are they like the one we have in our backyard with a leach field out there too? Okay, guess that's. Oh, also another comment, R80, isn't that zoned for 2 acres, 2 acre lots? If so, if this area in question is 11 acres, my math tells me 11 houses plus a street might fit in there. Not 10 houses. Not if it's R80 and that's 2 acres. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for coming out again. Steve Uzga, saying that correctly. Steve, could you give us your address, please?
Yeah, my name is Steve Oscar, and I live at 93 Dorrell Lane. And I guess my neighbor Jim O'Hara thinks he's the oldest resident on the street, but I've been here 29 years. Okay, and I've seen the houses develop on Dorrell Lane, and my wife and I are opposed to any kind of zoning changes. Okay, and I want to address the issue of the traffic itself. Okay, I do not go down Landing Street when I go to work. I take a left and I go over the mountain and through New Britain because it's safer and easier than getting out on Landing Street. And I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. On a weekend, forget it. You cannot get out of Landing onto Queen Street, onto Route 10, okay, without waiting and waiting and waiting. And there are nice people. They like to stop and let you go through, but you got 2 lanes of traffic, okay? The first car stops, okay? And the other one's going to plow right into my passenger side when I take a left, okay? It's a terrible road. It has been a terrible road. I've seen more accidents on it, okay? I was involved myself in an accident on Landing Street. And whoever said, people take care of business. They don't call the police. They call their insurance company, and it's done with, okay? So whoever's doing the traffic analysis better take a good look at the problems associated with traffic on Landing. It is a speedway over the hump, okay, going down to the down the road to that bend down there. So we're opposed to any changes in the zoning. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Steve, for coming out. Do we have anyone else on video who'd like to mention anything else? Joseph, I'm just gonna, before I come back to you again, I want to make sure I give everyone else a chance to weigh in. Is there anyone else on video who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Rob, can we open it up for the call-in users or people who are not on video? If there's anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this application, again, please identify yourself and give us your address.
This is James Bednarz, 260 Laning Street.
Hi, James.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate my opposition to the zoning regulation modifications as well as the Laning Oaks project as a whole. Regarding the traffic, I still do not believe the traffic study adequately takes into account the practicalities and realities of dealing with traffic on Laning Street and the intersection of Queen Street. Regarding the entrance in relation to the peak of Laning Street, the sightline and distance calculations refer to average speeds of about 40 miles per hour. Unfortunately, traffic often exceeds 50 miles an hour and close to 60 miles an hour in many cases. I purchased my home in March. I'm new to town. The most attractive feature of the area is the large amount of wooded area. Had I known such a large development was being planned directly across the street from me, I might have not have chosen this house. In my short time living here, when I pull out of my driveway at 260 Laning Street to take a left turn down towards Queen Street, I have to be extremely cautious of cars speeding over that peak and not seeing me pull out or having to time to slow down. The same cautions would be a concern for people taking left out of this new property away from Queen Street. I'm not opposed to the Fergolas developing their land within the confines of the existing zoning. However, it really seems the applicant's desire to change the zoning regulation in the city for the sole purpose of stuffing 3 times as many units into 11 acres is troubling and doesn't fit this area. The existing regulations were designed with a purpose of maintaining certain quality of life in Southington. I think it should remain that way. And I would note, Chairman, that when I purchased the house a couple months ago, the septic tank and distribution box were replaced. Prior to purchase, it had a crack in it, and the distribution box was damaged by tree roots. So that previous one was the original one to the house in 1963. So, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bednarz. Is there anyone else on the phone or not on video who'd like to speak in opposition to this application before I toss it back to Joe for?
Hi, how you doing? My name is Eric John Gable Sr., 288 Lanning Street. And I mentioned earlier today about the whole accident thing, what have you. I was in an accident on Lanning Street, taking a left turn out. It was at about 6:05 p.m. past 2 hours, and I had planned for them to go, but people don't recognize how fast people go on Queen Street, heading towards that on-ramp to the highway. I was hit at about 55 miles an hour, and my car, airbags, the works. I was lucky to be unharmed for the most part. Other than that, I started going around the road to Loper Street and going to the light, just like someone else said earlier. And you know what? That's getting more and more hard to get out of there as well. So, new developments, more and more traffic to be, in the long run. And then at this development, which is not on level ground at all. I go by there every time. I don't go to any under the bottom of Queen anymore. It's ridiculous. That's just there's no sidewalks for pedestrians for another thing at all. So what's going to happen? And no one mentioned 2, 3, 4, 5 years of construction trucks up and down the road. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a disaster. So that's how I feel about it. And if anyone's got anything to say against what I've said, then I'm here. I don't know if my wife has anything to add at all or not, but it's not a good place to be adding more homes.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for coming out tonight. We appreciate your input. Joe, I'm going back to you. I didn't get your last name the first time around, so if you can give that to us, that'd be great.
I was able to fix the feedback problem. Last name it's Dr. Joseph Pacheco. I lived in Southington for 30 years. I lived here at this address for 3 years. 469 Laning Street. Everything everybody's been saying, I'd just like to reiterate, but there's a couple of other points. Living here is really interesting. First off, there's a lot of people that walk their dogs. That might not seem like a big deal to you, but there's a lot of people walking, and there's no walk paths or sidewalks for the people to walk. Also, right on this 90-degree turn where it's so dangerous, is the entranceway to a 60 acre walk path, which does not allow for motorized vehicles, but people utilize that, and it's very, very, very limited. I think only 2 or 3 cars can park there. So people do walk and go across this sharp 90-degree turn right there, which is right in front of my house. I've had, like I've said, multiple accidents occur while I've lived here. I've talked to the wonderful police officers here in Southington, which I'm very proud of and support. And they've all referred me to a gentleman, a police officer by the name of Officer Schneider. He is apparently the one person to go through who's in charge of lights, stop signs, yield signs, traffic studies, anything to do with traffic in Southington. We've gone downtown to the police station. He's very difficult to get a hold of. There's only, like for this sharp curve, which is right down the street from this new development that's being proposed, there's only, I believe, 3 arrow signs, and there's one sign way down the road before it, which says it's got a 90-degree turn, and I believe there's only one 25-mile-an-hour sign. It really needs to be updated. It really needs to be protected, and I'm very thankful that whenever the police do hang out to watch and catch speeders, that they actually do that. I've taken the time to thank them. And I didn't mention it before, but the Southington High School kids, their track runs right by here. So every single day, they're always running right around. So you talk about pedestrians not being included in this study. It's also not just the people walking dogs or people wanting to go down a 60-acre walk path. It's also our high school children. And among other things, I'm also a teacher. So speed, the lack of signage. I would love to see a stop sign put in to stop all of that and make people slow down. I feel sorry, and I'm very thankful for my wonderful neighbors that the McFarlands that have their children. They're very cautious with their children. Hi guys, how you doing? There's also elderly people here, and they have to back out. They're very, very cautious. When I back out, we're very, very cautious. We often have to stop. It's not a simple, lazy, laid-back road. So it has to be taken into consideration. It does not show up on your statistical analysis. It just doesn't. I showed you the picture before of the car that was flipped over on my front lawn. I don't know why he wanted to park upside down on my fence, but he did. That was just one of several accidents that have been here while I've been here, and I've heard of a gentleman that was killed right on this corner before I moved into this home. So I just wanted to mention the high school, Officer Schneider, that I reiterate and support everything that everybody's saying against this, and that this corner is right up the street. Is very, very dangerous, and I don't go to the end of Landing Street and make a left. It's absolutely impossible. Making a right is at times even difficult, but if I'm going to be making a left, I'm going to go down and go up the next road with the light at the end. So all of these things just need to be taken into consideration. I really appreciate the lady who mentioned that this is an R80 zone. It shouldn't be downplayed, because it was set up to be an R80 zone. And we're talking about the welfare of the people here, and the people are speaking. So thank you for listening to me. I agree with everybody else that are residents here. God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this application at this time? Okay, as I said earlier, I'm intent on keeping this public hearing open, if for no other reason than I think that it would benefit everybody involved to have an in-person dialogue. It's as the person who's been doing this for 15 months now, I can tell you it's not easy to sit here and try to make sure that everybody gets heard. So we're going to keep this public hearing open at this time. Before we move on to the next one, Attorney Macarillo, I'll give you one final chance. Anything you want to add, or it's up to you.
No, I just like to confirm that the next meeting is going to be a hybrid meeting. So
Yes.
individuals, both staff, residents, and professionals can select that method. And also, if there's an opportunity to politely ask the fire and police chief to attend or perhaps respond to some questions that would benefit us, it would answer a lot of questions posed by everybody.
Yeah, I think we've tried that, Brian, but we'll certainly keep on top of it. I know that Rob is good about following up, and I heard Rob earlier that it is going to be a hybrid model for anybody who can't make it or doesn't feel comfortable in that kind of a setting in 2 weeks. So with that, we'll I don't know if Attorney Smith has anything he wants to add, or Attorney Taylor has anything he'd like to add.
No, I'm all set for tonight, Mr. Chairman, unless there's questions directly for me. And if you are going to continue the hearing, I would just ask permission to leave it after this point.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that, so we keep the cost down a little bit. So, Jeremy, you have anything, or?
I don't have anything at this time, but I will remain on the meeting just in case there's any questions later on.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Brian, thanks for your time. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
And Chairman, I'm sorry, just a housekeeping matter for statutory purposes. If we're up against the 65-day, or actually the 35-day clock, as I indicated to staff, my client would consent to an extension. I believe we're still under the executive order 7I, which extended, 11, which extended 7I until May 20th, which is 2 days from today.
So many executive orders, such little time. I don't know. I appreciate that, Brian. I appreciate, again, the flexibility that you and your client have shown as we get through this with this, we'll call it a unique platform that we're working on this application. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, Brian Smith, I would just recommend that we and maybe you typically do this, but it would be best if he does that in a writing to us, so we have it on the record, extension to June 1st, so that it's clear.
Yeah, I provided that to staff this morning.
Very good.
Received.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Let's move on to item 7B, Shlomar Achalinsky. I murdered that name again. Sorry about that. Special permit application for a garage in excess of 3 spaces, property located at 301 East Street in an R2025 zone, parcel size 0.99 acres. Special permit application 648. This was continued from May 4th. Before we move, I just want to let members of the public know that we're not going to be taking any further action on the Landing Street application. So if you wanted to break away from the meeting, don't expect that anything else is going to happen, because it will not. But if the applicant is here, I saw him earlier. My recollection is that you were going to do a revised site plan for us. There were a couple questions, and I saw that you submitted that. So let's let you talk about it. You might have to unmute yourself. Mr. Ochanowski.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep, okay, go ahead.
Yes, so Slavomir Olchanovsky, 301 East Street, Sarrington, Connecticut here. And so we are trying to build the garage. I believe you have the latest drawing with we downsizes for 2-car garage. And the driveway went connected with the existing driveway. And we try and get permit for that this time.
Okay, so you submitted a revised site plan, correct?
Yes.
C1 5/6/2021. So that
Yes.
came in a couple days after.
Yes.
After we had that. I'm gonna try to just bring that up so that we can. Oh, Rob's got it up there. No.
All right, hang on.
Okay. So it's up on the screen here.
Yes.
I think that some of the questions, if I remember correctly, and members of the commission, please correct me. But some of the questions were about the positioning of the oversized garage, as well as how that related to the, what I'll call a pool house, which appears, I think, to the north part of the garage. So does this reflect the conversations that we had a couple weeks ago?
Yes. That's is that a question to me or?
Yeah, to the
Okay,
applicant.
yes. So the pool house, I understand it's a limit on 240 square feet, I believe, right? Of the shed / pool house. I would like to have it in 400 square feet if possible. But if not, we'll keep it at 240. It's gonna be total rebuild. I can't save the old one. And I would like to move it a little bit closer to the pool. That's on the shed. It's gonna be the fence, like we mentioned last time. It's gonna be some iron stick fence around the property, enclosing this, and the wood fence will go down. That's on that left side of the property and the front. And as far as the garage, yeah, so we tried this plan, see if it's gonna be working. A little bit smaller, might fit better in this property.
Okay, so Rob, can you explain the process on it? What I think was just said is that the pool house is showing at about 400 square feet. He's only allowed up to 200, roughly 200 square foot. Could you just explain the application and what we have in front of us right now?
Yeah, I believe if the applicant, if the commission so chooses, to make a motion to approve, to remove the accessory building there, accessory pool, you could do so. Otherwise, he's gonna have to revise the plan.
Okay, so our options are to either remove the pool house completely off of the site plan, because it
Right.
wasn't part of the original application, or to have the applicant go back and revise the site plan again. Would he have to file a new application?
Well, no, he'd have to submit a revised plan.
With
So,
the accessory building being the 200 and roughly 200 square foot.
correct.
Mr. Chairman, may I jump in here? Steve Judas, Harry Colin's son.
Oh, hi, Steve. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I want to refocus on the garage because I know that was the application and that's the main modification to the site plan was for the garage. I think that he made some major changes from the garage and moved it away from the wetlands, from the existing driveway, moved it closer to the house, and then connected it to the existing driveway. I thought that was a a pretty major improvement over the previous plan and addressed most of the concerns that the commission members had. The pool house, I think when he was working with one of my staff, I wasn't aware that the pool house was larger than what is permitted by the zoning regulations, but I would hate to hold up the garage based on the pool house. The pool house, if it doesn't meet I don't think that this hearing really pertains to the pool house. It's really about the garage. And if the pool house on the plan doesn't meet the requirements, then he shouldn't get a zoning permit for that pool house. We can address that with him and the staff as we normally would, without I think harming our garage issue here. And Rob, if I'm over speaking, please feel free to.
No,
smack me
you're
down.
correct.
All
I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you. I'm not gonna go through everybody individually on this one, the commission members. If there's any commission member who has any questions for the applicant, just chime in here. In the interest of time. We're going into hour 3 soon, so I don't see anything else, so.
Mr. Chairman, it's Commissioner Gorick.
Yep, go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Just a quick, the gravel driveway to the west of the property, is that going to be removed and replanted with anything, or are you going to keep that gravel?
We would leave that as is.
Okay. And then, so we're just focusing on the garage only. We're not talking about the proposed shed.
Yeah, I would like to just remove the shed from the application
Okay.
altogether for now.
Oh, quick question. I'm sorry.
I don't think the commission has the right to, and I could be wrong, but I don't think the commission can give him a larger pool house than what the regulations require. Rob, am I correct with that?
Yeah, you're correct.
There's no mechanism for this commission to say, okay, you can build a bigger pool house.
Okay, just quick question, so I'm clear. On the pool house, actually, half of it is gonna be open, exposed, just gonna be overhead. Is this still gonna be counting as a square footage of the pool house? Because what I'm trying to do is, what I have right now is that 200 square feet shed. I'm trying to extend the overhead on 2 columns and basically have it as a open, like a veranda, kind of style. That's the pool house, not actually walking inside pool house. It's actually just overhead. So the 200 square feet almost going to be just a sitting covered patio. Is this going to count as a square footage of the pool house? We call it.
I would recommend that we bring a plan of the pool house to the planning department and let Rob kind of analyze whether he feels it's compliant or not. That would be my recommendation for
I
my
agree.
client.
I agree.
Okay. So we'll do on the separate permit?
Yes.
All right. We'll do.
Commissioner Gwark, are you all set with your questions?
So we're just basically going from a 39 by 24 structure to a 26 by 26, so it got quite a bit smaller, a couple of 100 square feet. Is that
Yes,
correct
sir.
for the garage?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it looks good. Looks a lot better.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other commissioner have any questions for the applicant? No? Any reason to keep this one open?
No, negative.
Yeah, Steve, any reason?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing on that. We'll move on to item 7C, Curtis Street Associates, proposed zoning text amendment to section 7A, 5-00.3, 5-00-13, 2-01A, B4, 2-01 AA C4. First floor area of principal building, zone amendment 610. Who is representing the applicant on this one?
I'll turn it over to Lou Perillo, Economic Development Director.
Okay. Mr. Perillo, welcome. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
being
Mr.
here.
Chairman, Commission members. For the record, my name is Lou Perillo. I'm the town's Economic Development Director. The applicant has requested a modification to the I-2 regulations. I want some clarification points, but for the
Do you stop? Your audio stopped,
Yeah,
Lou.
we lost you, Lou.
Lou, your audio is cut out. We still don't have them. Seven.
Premise.
Okay. Well, I got your back, I think. Go ahead.
You have me?
Yep.
We hear you.
Okay, great. The intent of this change is to provide a win-win scenario, if you will. It's good for the developer, it's good for the end user, it's good for the residential neighbor adjacent to it, and it's good for the town. As I continue the presentation, I'll explain how. To begin, as you know, I2 regs require a 2-acre lot size. In that 2-acre, they can utilize up to 50% of the lot size for the lot coverage for a building. The outdoor storage and the outdoor uses are what the heavy industrial regulations call for. What we're looking for in this particular instance of this text change is to provide for smaller lots, and the text would only apply to the lots that were reduced in coverage. So for example, if you do a 1/2 acre or 1 acre lot, it's a win for the town in the sense of it's the highest and best use of land. It's almost an I1 application within an I2. So someone is buying just what they need, and most of the use will be interior, and it allows for a small percentage of the actual structure for outside storage, which is something that we allow in an I1 under an SPU. So the utilization could increase the number of lots. So for example, if you take a 20-acre parcel, you might increase the lots from 10 lots to maybe 14. But instead of having 10 2-acre lots, you might get, 8 1-acres lots in there. The developer gets, a couple more lots. It's the same land, but you're getting better use of the land, and it's much more efficient. Where the neighbors could benefit is the restrictive use of the smaller lots are going to be restricted to a percentage of the building size for outside storage. They're also going to be quieter uses, generally speaking. They fit more in line with an I1 rather than, a heavy industrial use where they can actually have working activity on the lots. The town benefits by creating a more efficient use of the land. It gets greater utilization. It's by the highest and best standards. And you're not wasting any of the excess land or forcing a property owner to either rent out to a more egregious use just to make the capacity worthwhile. I actually believe the applicant's requested change is too stringent. If you look at the requirements of a buffer up against a residential lot, it's, I believe, 30 or 35 feet landscape plus a fenced in. A smaller lot doesn't really allow for that much utilization anyway, when you break it down. So if you're putting on a 20,000 square foot lot, a 5,000 square foot building, and then you have parking area and all the buffers, there really isn't that much more land with which to use for outside storage. So in closing, it should only be applicable to the reduced lot acreages within the subdivision, and the other areas that are not impacted that are still 2 acres should be allowed to remain the heavy industrial. And I'm here for any questions you might have.
Can't hear you, Bob.
Sorry, Lou, this addresses the area of Curtis Street where we had an application to convert that I think it's an I1 zone into an R2025 zone probably about 2 years ago.
Correct. It's actually an I2 zone.
I2 zone, okay.
And Mark Lovely came to change it to residential. If you recall, at that time, they said we had significant demand for industrial land. We were able to find a very capable developer in Rich Munson. Additionally, we have pretty much the whole site ready to be developed and sold from a subdivision standpoint. And the demand was so great which is where the impetus for the smaller lots came into being, to just satisfy the current demand. And also, we're very cognizant of the residential neighborhood. If we could put a 5,000 square foot building where most of the activity for like an HVAC company is inside with a few trucks or whatever for outside storage, they're going to be a much better neighbor than if you make us continue with 2 acres and put several landscapers within the area, along with the existing excavation companies that we have planned. So we think it's a greater utilization of the land. Like I said, we think it's a better fit for the neighbors, and we hope you see it that way.
Okay. And this would give us the opportunity to sort of address the buffer issue that's going on out there right now.
Exactly.
Okay. Any members of the commission have any questions for Mr. Perillo on this? Peter Santago.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Lou, as always, thank you for everything that you do for the town. We wouldn't be where we are without your efforts. So, as always, thank you for what you do. Where else? Because whenever you do a text change, as you know, it just doesn't affect this particular parcel, but elsewhere. So, where else would this be applicable in town, do you think, if we make this change?
I believe it could be any I2 parcel. You might want to restrict it to certain areas, whether it be adjacent to a trail. But for example, the Pratt and Whitney site is an I2 40-acre site. The Smorn Farm is over 60 acres that abuts some residential. I think there's the Borshevitz piece that's 40 acres, I think, bordering I-84 and Summit Farms. There's significant access issues and wetland issues. I think there's, trying to think where else there's significant I2. There might be some I2 off of Masteriani Place, but those are pretty much fully developed. And I think those are the largest I2 parcels that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so basically it says if you want to put, for lack of a better word, a small factory or small business, you could do it on less of a parcel than having to buy a bigger parcel that you may not necessarily need but have to pay taxes on. So from a business standpoint, you're seeing it as attracting more folks, because we got some letters on it, business people who are in favor of. That's kind of what they're saying, that I'd like to come, but if I got to have 2 acres, it costs too much and I may not have as much space to do anything with. That's how you see it too?
Oh, without a doubt. Years ago, we tried to create an I3 where you didn't have to put up a building, and I think we limited it to 2 or 3 sites. The issue that comes into play is land is not cheap. So it's not only the taxes on the land, it's you're making someone buy, for example, if you have a house and you could put a house on a half an acre, but you're making someone buy the land for 2 acres. We find it to be kind of a waste of that extra land because it's still developed. Now someone has to qualify for it, put up a building. Now you're almost forcing them to rent out that land if they could. And there's a barrier to entry for many of these small businesses. Now, if we could reduce the price commensurate with the value of the land, the developer might be able to get a little bit more land, but he's got the risk associated with it. So it really is an even call for the developer per se. It might be a little bit of a benefit, but someone going in can actually right size the parcel. And in business today, you have to, there's just no room for waste, especially in, a high tax state like Connecticut.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. That helps me. All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Any other members of the commission have any questions? Caleb? You're muted, Caleb.
I'm here. Thanks. Sorry. Hey, Lou, thank you for coming out. Quick question. Is there, long term, do you see any kind of downfall or not necessarily downfall, but downside to a change like this? I like the idea. I think it's a good use of larger tracts of property. you know, being able to put in smaller businesses, smaller machine shops, things like that, that, you know, could benefit for something like this. But is there, you know, is there something that we're giving to take this advantage?
It's hard to predict on the future sites, but for example, I think you would see it come in on a subdivision where we might be overly restricting our heavy industrial use, to bring in somebody like Supreme Forest Products again, that might need a large tract of land. I think you're going to find some residents kind of opposing the bigger tract, bigger uses of heavy industrial. So I think this kind of is appropriate for the times. You know, if we have 10 people looking to build right now, and they're less egregious use than what an I-2 would normally call for in an area adjacent to residences, for this particular area, I think it's a great fit for everybody. Could someone come out and try to make a significant cluster of smaller lots? They could, but I think the town still benefits because it's more of an I-1 use than an I-2. With the, you know, I think this reg is severely limiting the outside storage. I would have probably modified it to be equal to the size of the building or twice the size of the building. Again, if you take a 20,000 square foot lot and you put a 5 or 10,000 square foot building on it, plus the parking, plus the retention pond, doesn't, and plus the buffers, it doesn't really leave a lot for the outside storage. But if they're willing to restrict it to that amount, you know, again, I think it changes an I-2 to an I-1, but I think it fits the demand. The other aspect of it is this is another one of our subdivisions that we were able to do without any taxpayer funds at all. That's becoming almost impossible to do. I think we're able to do it this time because we have a very aggressive, capable developer in Rich Munson, and we have several interested parties ready to go, which has reduced the risk involved with the build out. Because I think if the subdivision gets approved, the individual lots could be sold very quickly, and again, reducing the risk. And that helps everybody.
So this kind of essentially gives us the ability to make industrial parks, so to speak. I
Correct.
guess to use a generalized term.
Correct. And like, you know, if you wanted, you could restrict it by saying no more than 50% of the land could be, you know, reduced size lots. But we don't have a lot of people rushing down our door to do industrial subdivisions. They're just not known to be extremely profitable because the time to sell out all the lots usually increases the risk substantially. You know, that's why if you remember the old industrial parks, I think it was FIP Construction used to buy big swaths of land and sit on it because they weren't paying a lot for the land. Now you're paying a significant amount for land, and you have the impacts of wetlands and topography that you didn't have 50, 60 years ago. They would just fill everything in. You know, which is not something that we're proud of or we want to do. We want to be respectful to the neighbors and respectful to the land. And again, why make someone buy 2 acres if they don't need it?
And so my last question is that it doesn't stop someone from utilizing that much land. It just enables someone to use less.
Correct. You know, so it's just more efficient use of the land. And it actually, you know, if you had to buy a home that was 5,000 square feet, because that's what the regs say, how many people would be buying 5,000 square foot homes if you only needed, you know, 1,500 or 700 or, you know, so this kind of tailors the land utilization to the highest and best use. I mean, why make people buy more than they need? You're just going to gobble up more land. We prefer to keep it, you know, more open, if you will.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's an increased efficiency, and I appreciate the effort. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb. Any other members of the commission with any questions? Seeing or hearing none, we'll open up to members of the public. Is there anyone, member of the public who'd like to testify in favor of this application? Identify yourself and give us your address, please.
Rich Munson, I'm here. And just like to thank you for hearing the application. And I think Lou did a great job of presenting for us. And we hope to be working with the town for in the future for a successful project. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate you coming here and putting this in front of us. I think it's got some legs. So I see Mark Bernardi up there. Mark, you want to testify?
Yeah, Mark. Mark Berardi, 160 Curtis Street. My family and I reside directly next door to 136 Curtis Street. Fortunately, I feel like our back's kind of up against the wall with this decision. As it pertains to the resolution of the buffer being replaced, I am in favor of the text amendment. I ask that you please keep in mind, though, that the buffer was removed 5 years ago, and this has resulted in, a panoramic view of the property for approximately 9 months of the year, with accompanying noise, sounds, smells, vibrations, after hours activities, traffic, vagrancy. And as a matter of fact, if you were to look out this window here, there's a truck that's been idling now for approximately 3 hours, which is very commonplace on the property. It's also important for the commission to know, not only was the buffer removed and destroyed, but the tenants were so reckless that it actually encroached into my neighbor's property. And this took place despite an active cease and desist from the Planning and Zoning Department. Approximately a year and a half ago, this commission voted to keep 136 and I-2. And as you know, this property has morphed into a significant headache for not only, I feel like we continuously go back to the buffer. It does not only affect me, it also affects the folks on Riverside Court, the folks leading up, heading north on Curtis Street. And since we last met roughly a year and a half ago, it's gotten predictably worse. Considering the pandemic, court delays, the inability to enforce meaningful zoning ordinances, as soon as a site plan becomes available, I think it's safe to say that in saying that I am in favor of this, we're seeking an intentional, thoughtful, accountable level of oversight that has specific deadlines attached and a formal plan of action. And finally, I'd like to quote our I should say, then attorney manager Mark Shota from the Planning and Zoning Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes from December 6th of 2016 regarding Mr. Munson's industrial property located on 172 Lazy Lane that had some similar problems to what we're experiencing now over at 136. And I quote Mr. Shota, "It is difficult with a residential zone with I-2 around it. You want to be sensitive to the fact it's an I-2 zone, but you have to balance off the residential." Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. Thanks for coming out tonight.
You bet.
Steve Colwell raised his hand, or has his hand raised there. Steve, give us your address, please.
How you doing? Steve Colwell, 196 Curtis Street. I'm not really sure if you opened it up to like opposition yet. I actually had some questions, so I'm not sure if this is the right time.
Go ahead, Steve. I think you're the only other person who's going to talk on this one, so fire away.
Okay. So I live, the land is directly behind me outside my window right now. The question I had is, do you guys happen to know, Mr. Perillo, Mr. Munson, how many of these lots you plan on building? How many buildings you plan on building? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, Rich Munson responding to that, there could be as many as, I believe, 10 lots in the subdivision. And I believe that 6 of those would be the smaller lots, 1 acre lots, and then more towards the rear of the property, and including and under the power lines, those would be some of the larger lots, probably an acre and a half up to maybe 3.5 acres. We also have Seb Bovino representing us. Seb, I think you could probably respond accurately to that.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Seb Bovino, planner with Crescent Jones and Associates, represented the applicant. Rich Munson is correct. The number of lots probably going to be around 10 lots. I want to make a presentation. I appreciate Lou Perillo coming out in support of the application. Rich Munson, which is the applicant, has experience in industrial development. Over the years in meetings we had with clients and town staff, the discussion was always about the need of additional industrial 2-zone land in Southington.
Hey, Seth.
Yeah.
Seth, could you answer Steve's question? Steve really has the floor right now. He's asked the question about the number of lots. I don't want to deviate from that. We can come back to you later.
About 10 lots. 10 lots is the number that I foresee.
So,
Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, with that said, we're looking at roughly 10 buildings then.
That's a fair estimation.
Okay. Yeah, as Mark Berardi said, it's unfortunate we have our backs up against the wall. It's kind of pointless for me to vote yay or nay. Like, am I in an opposition or am I? It doesn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, especially in the wake of the first item tonight that we discussed for over 2 hours, the traffic issue in this town, the development in this town, the incredibly different scene that we see on Route 10 from when I was in high school, when I was in college, when I was in my 20s. I mean, it's now you're going to put roughly 10 buildings back there with trucks coming in and out, causing absolutely increased traffic down on the intersection where Art Ridge is. I mean, it's inevitable. I mean, whether or not people would like to admit that or not, it's inevitable. I mean, I'm no fool, and neither are the rest of you guys. So it's just unfortunate, you know. Would have been nice to see something else happen with that property, but there's really nothing I can do about it. I just hope that there is a reasonable buffer from our backyards. I worked in the construction industry, and I know what yards look like, right? I know what buildings that house landscapers, excavation business owners look like. It's not clean and it's not attractive, and there's a lot of noise. So now we're going to have 10 of those back there. And so I suppose good for the town to keep that eye too. But it's unfortunate for me, and I think it's unfortunate for the people that are going to be in this area and their quality of life. But I'll zip it now because this is going to get pushed through. I just hope that the buffer zones are respected, and that the residents that are adjacent to that property on the Curtis Street side are considered as we go forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I don't think there's any predetermination on what's going to happen with this. Lou or Sev or Mr. Munson, could you just talk about the change with the outside storage and the requirement to keep that storage
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Seth Bovino, planner with Kretz Jones, represented the applicant. Just as a repeat, I represent Rich Munson. He has experience in industrial land development, and over the years, we always talked about creating additional I-2 zone, and we do have some I-2 land in Southington. However, the bulk requirement of Section 7A are very onerous to a developer and the possible buyers. The requirements are to have 200 feet of frontage and 80,000 square feet of land for each lot. The need now and in the future is for smaller lots to allow small businesses, which we would consider those businesses like incubators, if you will, to afford a building lot and to build on it. Some of those buyers may choose to buy a double lot, save it for growth, or sell it if things do not work out for them. However, that gives them the ability to afford the first step. So that is the reason for this proposal. Therefore, in collaboration with staff, we propose something that is already offered in the I-1 zone, which is if a site is served by public water and sewer, Section 7A E in parentheses refers to Section 5-00.13 of the regulation, which allows the lots to have a minimum area of 20,000 square feet and a lot width frontage of 100 feet, side yard of 15 feet, and a rear yard of 20. In this case, the main part of the change, however, it trickles down to other sections of the regulation, which we had to address. As an example, outside storage is, with this regulation, is proposed to be 50% of the building footprint. Instead of being an unregulated number, we are proposing to be 50%. Lou Perillo was indicating that maybe should be more, and if the commission feels there could be more, we are open to that. Obviously, the outside storage is going to be fenced in. In addition to that, this regulation addresses the screening, which is Section 500.3. We propose to be a 30-foot wide landscape berm, not just a row of trees, but it's going to be an elevated berm, 30 feet in width, with trees planted on top of it to provide the proper screening along the neighborhood that they were referring to. The front setback is also reduced from 40 feet for the building to 30 feet, so it allows the building to be moved away from the neighborhood. And basically, that's the basic regulation. That it's the bulk regulation that we're trying to change to allow for smaller lots, to give opportunity to people to afford to start building and utilizing the site. And most of these users, they're not going to be heavy industrial users. They're going to be users that will use the inside of the building to do their business, and they need some storage outside. So that's why we include it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thanks, Seb. Is there any other questions from members of the commission? Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, so Sev and Mr. Munson, I think, how we got here sort of was we had a neighbor who didn't play nice. And the surrounding neighbors, we had a neighbor who played there nice, Mr. Delahani, who was there, played nice with the surrounding folks when they were there. And then we got a neighbor who didn't play nice. And we heard all the frustration from the neighbors, which is absolutely legitimate. And I feel for them. So I guess with anything like this, because it's zoned I-2 now, and this just makes, more places be able to go there, what we would be looking for is people who are respectful of their neighbors, who would talk to the neighbors, maybe do the barrier first in a site plan to protect the neighbors before doing a building or things like that. So I guess, Mr. Munson, we're not talking site plan, we're talking a text change right now. Because if we're changing a zone, we're talking about text change.
Correct.
But I think in hearing some of the conversation today, how we got here was a neighbor who didn't play with his neighbors. And we would certainly be wanting someone who was respectful of their neighbors and who would listen to them and do what's appropriate and beyond to be a good neighbor for the property. Because I think that's the vibe that you're hearing.
I'll address that. We do have a current building and we've developed, the land at 172 Lazy Lane, and we do have current residential neighbors. And to coin your phrase, I think we have played nice with the neighbors there. We've had a few bumps along the road. I'm not going to say that we're, without incident, but I think if you look back through the records of all of your planning and zoning correspondence since the inception of that development, we've done as much as we can to placate all of the concerns of the abutters, and I really don't think that we've caused any incident. And we do have, I am in the excavation business, as probably most of you know. That's what attracted me to that site. But I try to be more than respectful in using that property for my own operation. And we certainly are more than willing to design the sites that we're hoping to develop with all of the proper buffers and concerns that are going to keep everyone happy.
Right. And of course, this is just a text change. So if somebody had to go there, we still have to have site plans approved and things like that, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So before a shovel hits the ground, whatever business would come would still have to come before this commission, and we would have, some sort of say over site plans and things like that in the process. So this is just, a text change to be a little more friendly to business, which I get. But in particular with the area, there's still a lot more process-wise that would need to happen before, anybody went anywhere.
You still got a lot. You still got a lot of. You still got a lot of control.
Yeah. That's all I have,
Yes, you
Mr.
do.
Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Any other members of the commission have any questions? No? Mark, I saw you had your hand up there. You want to add something? You're all set?
I'm good, Commissioner. I had a question, but I will wait till we progress forward with the site plan.
Okay. Nick's got his hand up. Nick, you got a question for the applicant?
Not really a question. I just wanted to introduce myself. My wife Taylor and I moved across the street from the trucking company at 143 Curtis Street about 6 months ago. It's definitely like really noisy and like a big nuisance, and trucks are coming in and out of all hours of the day. And I just wanted to add my name to the list of people that are kind of disappointed with where this is going. I don't know if that's 100% on topic, but it's my first town meeting for this. I had heard when I moved in that they're gonna put in some apartments or something like that, and I thought, okay, that's better than a bunch of noisy trucks, but it sounds like that's not happening now. It's gonna be 10 businesses, so if that is truly gonna be the better of two evils, then I'm in favor, but disappointed.
Okay. Thanks, Nick, for coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts with us. If there's nothing else, are we ready to close this public hearing on this application?
Mr. Chairman,
Sev?
just one more minute. I just wanted you to know and the public to know, we have to go through the subdivision approval process. And then after that, each lot will have its individual site plan approval process.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sev. Any commissioner have a reason for keeping this public hearing open? Rob, is there anything outstanding on this one that we should keep it open?
Negative.
Okay, so with that, we'll close the public hearing. Move on to item 7D, Edward Reinhardt, request to change his own district boundary from R 2025 to I2 on property located at 35 Bird Street. Zone change number 570. Mr. Reinhardt?
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, Seth, go ahead.
If you're ready, I could start the presentation. Do you see
Let's
the
go.
drawing on the
Let's go.
screen?
Yep.
Good. I'm representing the applicant. The property is located at 35 Burr Street as indicated. It's in Milldale. It is served by public water and sewer. The land area is 2.5 acres. It's zoned currently R2025. The current access is from Burr Street. It is bounded in part on the west and south by residential zone, east by business zone land, which is the bowling alley, and west and north by I-2 zone property for about a total of 494 linear feet. I go over the directions here. This is Burr Street.
Seth, we have nothing up on our screen from you sharing.
Oh, I thought you said you were seeing it.
No, I didn't say that.
Sorry. I thought we was working. Is it come up now?
Nope.
Let's try a different thing here. Okay, I'm going to press share. See if this works. Did it come up now?
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you. Orientation, this is Burr Street. North is up. Burr Street goes east-west. This is Park Street in this area here. The property has frontage on Burr Street. And along the southerly property line, you have residential zone, and the west of the property access area is residential zone. To the northeast, we have a B zone, the bowling alley. To the west, we have I-2 zone. To the north, we have I-2 zone. The proposal is to rezone the area to I-2. Because there is a demand for I-2 zone in town, as we just discussed with the previous application, and the applicant is in a business that require I-2 zone land, he would like to stay in town. This parcel serves his purposes. Therefore, the request is to change the zone from R2025 to I-2 zone. The plan is to access the land from Mastriani Drive, which is I-2 zone. So this blue line here, this area here, will be the access to this property. No access will take place from Burr Street. The application is to rezone the entire property right now in front of you. However, in discussion with staff, the applicant is willing to reduce it to a line connecting the southeast corner of parcel 22 and the northeast corner of parcel 30, which is this. He's willing to draw a line from this corner to this corner and have this parcel here, this portion of the land remain R2025 and this become I-2 zone. That's just something that he's offering if the commission wants to. Most of the time, zone changes are made along the boundary lines. And in this case, this area really is not usable because there's a water course going through here, that blue line you see. And also, there's steep grades in this area. So no matter what happens, there'll be a buffer to the neighbors. The buffer will be there either with this line being there or not. So the way we're proposing, it's going to create a buffer to the neighbors, which is the property owners to the south. Or it can stay the same, as I said, based on what the commission wants to do. And we'll still have a buffer because the brook and steep grades and so forth. The basis of this request for a zone change is to expand the existing I-2 zone. It will not be a spot zoning. It will be an expansion of an existing I2 zone. And as I indicated, it's going to be served by public water and sewer, and the utility is going to come from Mastriani Drive. The access is going to be from Mastriani Drive. Mastriani Drive eventually goes to Burr Street. Any questions?
Thanks. Have any members of the commission have any questions of the applicant? Just speak up if you have any questions.
Commissioner Coles here. I'll be very brief, I promise. The existing I2 zone, what is the current use of that stuff?
Current I2 zone, the use?
Yeah, the property it's being attached to, or that's kind of being included in that. What's the current use?
This property here in blue? Is that what you're talking about?
No, just south of that.
This property here is not gonna get attached to it. It's a separate parcel. This is a separate parcel from the current I2 parcel that's to the west.
Okay, so it's a completely different owner, different operation.
That's right. Yeah, different ownership. Yeah. But
All right,
it will be accessed from this access way to the property here.
Thank you, Seth.
Yep.
Thanks, Caleb. Any other questions, members of the commission?
Yeah, Seth, so what's the business that's going here, or do we not have one yet?
The business that it intended to go here, it's the client is in the concrete foundation business, concrete work. So he intends to build a small building in this area and have his trucks and equipment parked here.
And I'm trying to remember what's there. So is that in keeping with some of the other I2 stuff that's around there?
Yes, there's a landscaping business in this parcel here.
Yeah.
And there's going to be multi-buildings on this parcel here, I2 zone. We just staked the first building on this parcel, and there's going to be, I think, 8 to 10 buildings built in this area.
Okay. So given that, I kind if we approve this, and firstly, I'd kind of like that line to be where the line is and remain R 2025 for buffer purposes. I think that's probably a good idea, given what you have there. So I think that's probably a good offer, given what you're talking about there. And given the stream that goes through. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Peter. Any other member of the commission have any questions for the applicant? So is the piece of property what's outlined in red on the screen there?
Yes, the property is outlined in red. And
The outline in blue that's not part of the property that we're talking about.
It's not part of the property right now. This blue area is part of this property, but he has a contract on it, which he will get either buy or create an easement for the access to get to this property.
Rob, do we have any instances where we have a piece of property, one lot that's zoned differently like that would be?
Yeah, good question. Is that I2, Seth?
It's currently I2.
Okay.
It's this is the existing I2 zone.
Rob, I could answer that.
Lou?
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Lou Perillo, Town's Economic Development Director. We had a couple, if you recall, opposite the Ice House on Meriden Waterbury Road. I think it was Ralph Warner's parcel, was partially business to the front and I-1 to the rear. I think the commission moved that line through the property owner's request. I think you also did it on the gas station where it was I2 and you carved out a business portion of that existing lot. So boundaries within a parcel can be moved, just like town differentiation lines. Southington and Cheshire goes right through one property owner's property.
Okay. Thanks, Lou. Any other questions for the applicant from members of the commission? Hearing and seeing none. Any members of the public wish to testify in favor of this application?
Mr. Chairman, Lou Perillo, may I speak?
Absolutely, Lou, go ahead.
Lou Perillo, Southington Economic Development. We're in favor of changing the boundary, a portion of the boundary as identified with either the water swale or with allowing that portion to remain R2025. Under site plan, you may want to stipulate you could not get access to Bird Street. Access has to go on Mastriani Place. Mastriani Place is an existing industrial road. I believe we brought in Connecticut seal coating from Waterbury for the parcel to the north. Mastriani Landscaping has been there for a number of years operating. So that buffer is a natural buffer for the remaining R2025. Won't be any residential building on it. As the quality of the R2025, if you don't approve it and access is granted, we really wouldn't want to have a residential use getting into the industrial on Mastriani Lane, Mastriani Place property on the drive. So we're supportive of the partial boundary as identified as R2025 to the south and I2 to the north. And as Sev said, it's not spot zoning because you're just adding to the existing I2. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Lou. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Any members of the public wish to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing and hearing none. Sev, anything else to close it out?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any reason to keep this application open, Rob?
Negative.
Any commission member object to closing the public hearing on this? We'll close the public hearing on this. Seeing none, move on to item 8. A, B, and C are all going to be tabled. Rob, do we need a motion for that, or can we just do it?
Yeah.
The public
make a
hearing's still
motion.
open, so. We're good with that? Yeah, okay. Item 8D. Sev, you can stop sharing your meeting up there, your screen. Item 8D, Solomar Ochalowski, special permit application for a garage in excess of 3 spaces, property located at 301 East Street in an R2025 zone, parcel size 0.99 acres, SPU 648. So, sure. Rob, can you drop said screen off, please?
I don't know if I can do that.
I'll try. I don't have it on my screen. I'll try. Bird Street.
So if you wouldn't see it on your screen, no, I want you to stop sharing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't seem to do it.
There you go, sir. Thank you.
Very
So
good.
item 8D. What's the commission's pleasure there?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve SPU 648.
Bob Solka, do you-
Commissioner Locke seconds.
Okay. Commissioner Locke makes a second. Motion by Commissioner Solka. Is there an intent to drop the pool house off of that site plan?
Commissioner Locke says we should leave it to Rob to discuss that with him at a further date.
And just to be clear, it's SPU 638, not 48.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, because we got 648 on our agenda here.
Oh.
But, okay. Bob Sokol, what are your thoughts to what Stu said?
Well, it was my understanding they were gonna come in with a separate application for the removal or the modification to that pool to bring it down to 240 as a separate application.
So I just want to be clear that this is just for the garage.
That is correct.
Commissioner Locke, is that your intent?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Rob,
I just like to thank the applicant for making the change that he did to bring it more in line with what we were asking for.
thanks, Bob. Rob,
Yeah,
you want
it's
to
a
call?
matter of clarification. It is SPU 648.
Okay.
Thank you.
To get the record correct, but, okay, can you call the roll, please?
All right, who's seated on this one? Is
Caleb is seated.
in Albanese?
No, because we have everyone else. The only one we're missing is Volpe.
I think you seated Caleb in for Volpe, right? Correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
All right, so Gwork,
Commissioner Gwark, yes.
Wolowski,
Wolowski, yes.
Fox,
Commissioner Locke, yes.
Coles,
Coles is a yes.
Santego,
Nintendo, yes.
Salka,
Salka, yes.
Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes, motion passes. Congratulations. Item 8E, Curtis Street Associates proposed zone text amendment to sections as they're listed there, first floor area of principal building, zone amendment 610.
Commissioner Salka make a motion to approve ZA 610.
Motion for Commissioner Salka. Do we have a second?
I'll second Santego.
Santego with a second. Any discussion on this? I'll just say, this, I'm happy that they're moving forward with something here. Is it perfect? I don't know that it's that, but I'm a firm believer that you don't have the perfect become the enemy of the good. So I think that this is a step in the right direction to addressing the issues that we all heard about roughly about 2 years ago. And I think that at the end of the day, that it's gonna end up being something that will boost the economic development in that part of town on that piece of land and help Lou out in that regard. So unless anyone else has anything else to add, we'll ask Rob to call the roll, please.
Okay. Gwork,
Commissioner Gwark, yes.
Wolowski,
Wolowski, yes.
Fox,
Locke, yes.
Coles,
Coles is a yes.
Santego,
Santego, yes.
Salka,
Salka, yes.
Hammersley.
Hammersley's a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8F. Edward Reinhardt requests a change zone district boundary from R2025 to I2 on property located at 35 Bird Street. Zone change 570.
Commissioner Salka make a motion to approve ZZ 570 with the stipulation that there'll be no additional curb cuts onto Bird Street.
Rob, is that to put the curb cut piece in there? Is that proper or isn't that more of a site?
We could say curb cut or access.
But I'm just wondering.
Isn't it supposed to be about the exit of that? So they exit out through Mastriani Drive?
I'm just wondering if that's more of a site plan issue than a zone text amendment.
Yeah, no, it's definitely more of a site plan issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair, so Commissioner Salka, I think the intent would be, and see if you agree, that we would take the applicant's offer of the line that he drew to have below the line remain R2025, but above the line to the north be the zone change of I2.
Yeah, the revised plan.
The revised
Yeah,
plan.
Yeah, because we're looking at, that's what we're motioning on, is on the revised plan that's on our file, so.
Right,
I think
so-
if we just approve the, 570 as submitted, as revised, that would account for it. Thank you, Peter.
Yep, so if that is the motion as revised, then I'll second Commissioner Salkin's motion.
Okay, just for the record, Bob Sulker, can you just say that that is the motion, or just let us know that that's what your intent is there?
That was the intent of my motion, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Rob, can you call the roll, please?
All right, Gore,
Commissioner Dvorak, yes.
Wildowski,
Wildowski, yes.
Locks,
Commissioner Locke, yes.
Coles,
Coles, yes.
Centego,
Santego, yes.
Salka,
Salka, yes.
and Chairman Hammersley.
Hammersley is a yes. Motion passes 7-0. Item 8G, Romano Parker and Associates, site plan application for a gasoline filling station and convenience store car detailing. Property located at 1608 Meriden Waterbury Road, owned by Mid-State Manufacturing in a B zone, parcel size 1.37 acres, SPR number 1818.
Yeah.
Who is the applicant on this?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, staff recommends this is not ready for action.
Okay, so do we want to just table this?
I'm not sure if the applicant's here, present.
Yes, Jonathan Ovin is here on behalf of MDP Holdings LLC.
Okay, Jonathan, it seems that you have an incomplete application. So I'm gonna kind of suggest before we move forward on this, that you meet with planning town staff to go over where the holes are and try to fill those in for us.
Got it.
Is that what you're looking for, Rob?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any objection to any member of the commission tabling this application at this time? Seeing none, Jonathan, you clear on what we need you to do?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Okay, so Rob, do we need a voice vote on tabling, or is it?
Voice votes is fine.
Okay, all those in favor of tabling item 8G, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Item 8H, Southington Cheshire Community YMCA application for extension of earth excavation for the removal of 125,912 cubic yards of material, property located at 1,000 East Street in an R80 zone, parcel size 141.6 acres, EE 141.1. My understanding, Rob, is that this application is currently in front of wetlands.
Yes, this one and the next one. The
So these two would not be
SPR.
ready for action this evening.
Correct.
So if we can get a motion to table on this,
So moved.
who made that? Commissioner Salka?
Yes, I should have
Second.
asked for that earlier, huh? Have a good night, guys.
Salka will second.
Salka is a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 8I, looking for a motion to table on that as well.
Motion to table,
Motion to
Commissioner Salka.
Salka, yep. Who's the second?
Coles.
Bowles, okay. Caleb. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Item 8J, release of a 5,000 ENS bond, LePage Builders, Millcrest Condos, 514 Mill Street, SPR 1595. Jim Grappone.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Capone, this item is ready for action.
Okay. Hey, well, I need a motion, so
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, we approve SPR 1595.
Commissioner Salk with a motion, second.
Second.
Commissioner Woloski with a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Rob, can we do a voice vote on this one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, all those in favor say yes, yes?
Yes.
Any opposed? I jumped the gun, motion passes. Congratulations. Item 9, administrative items, there's nothing there. Rob, you have anything you want to talk about, or?
Nope. at this late hour? No.
Good call at 10:44 PM. Item 10, item scheduled for a public hearing. We got one item underneath there, Rob.
Yep,
Pretty self-explanatory, it looks like, no?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Item number 11, receipt of new applications. We have 2 applications underneath there as well.
Yes.
And just a reminder to the commissioner, I'll go back up to item number 9, that we do have the public input session on the Welch Road, Welch Road application from the last meeting that we're going to have at the next meeting on June 1. June 1 is at this time anyway, scheduled to be an in-person meeting. Rob, I assume it's going to be in the room that we used to call home.
Yep.
Haven't seen it.
The old home.
We're coming home, and that will be a hybrid meeting. So anybody who does not feel comfortable or cannot make it for any reason, I assume that we'll set up some protocol on letting town staff know. And with that, we'll look, unless anyone else has anything else, we'll look for a motion to adjourn at 10:45.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Coles, good motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Walowski.
Second.
Okay, folks. Anyone, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Nay. It was a long one. Thank you all for your patience and your time, and have a great night.
I'm sure next week will be just as
Yeah, have a
brief.
good rest of the night.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
See y'all, yeah. Hey, Peter. Oh, he's gone. We'll see y'all.